Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the room/podcast where it happens. I am your co-artistic producer, Mackenzie, and welcome back to our 200th episode of The Cup, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. And I am joined for our special highlight, keystone, big billboard episode by our two wonderful core members of the trio. We have the wonderful co-artistic producer, Mr. Ryan Borochovitz.
Hello, Mac. We did it. 200. Woo.
We did it. 200 in.
Yeah.
We haven't killed each other yet.
No, we have not yet.
That's
an ominous word you added.
Well, I mean, look, we have not broken out our pistols to go off to, duel in the field yet.
Yes.
I was just about to say that. No duel has been planned in Jersey quite yet.
Who would be who's second here, depending on who's dueling who? Can we all agree that dueling is pointless and dumb?
What? What did you say, Matt?
Jill would be my second if you and I are dueling. Then who's your second?
Oh no, I'll find someone. I'll get Autumn to come in.
Yes, okay.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
All right. Well, we're off to a great
start.
Or
Andrew.
Autumn and I would definitely work something out. Like, you're both safe. It's fine.
But then, Ryan, what's in your cup today?
Yeah, so I have in the cup because, it seems like if there's any occasion to celebrate us with our chalice, it is this one. And I have the very same thing that I was drinking on our very first episode and many episodes since. It's orange pico tea. Yeah, that's what I got. It's tea. Happy 200.
And if you don't know, now you know.
Hey.
Exactly. And of course, we have our wonderful associate artistic producer. We have the wonderful Jillian Robinson. Hello, Jill.
Hello.
What is it? What is your ensemble today? What is in your cup?
Yes, my ensemble. So I have this velvet half blazer. So cute. A lot of the men in this piece obviously don their velvet blazers.
Yes.
Those of you watching on YouTube behind on Mac's screen. And then I have a little lacy red bralette to kind of commemorate maybe a little Mariah Reynolds in there, or even just the ladies. And also I love the ensemble costumes are kind of undergarment-y, so I thought, why not? And then I have just my little beige square, they kind of look like a little pendant earrings, so again sticking with the beige hues of the ensemble. There's a lot of letters in this piece, so the cream colored paper, so, and then a little pop of red. My hair was curled from earlier today. We're feeling great. Work.
Yeah. Love that. And I am drinking some Diet 7-Up out of a crystal wine glass in honor, because it looks very spiffy and kind of Continental Congress-y style glass they would have. And then, of course, I also have another cup of Crystal Light because I'm currently in the midst of some type of sinus cold thing. Going to the doctor tomorrow. We'll figure it out. But anyway, lots of liquids to make sure Max stays from hacking up a left lung on camera.
Should we pay the doctor to look away?
Yeah.
Hey. I will say what's in my cup as well.
Yes.
Just at time of recording, my apartment is currently in shambles. I'm getting my flooring all redone, so I've had to move furniture. Unfortunately, I can't lift it in slow motion as the world turning upside down because it's too heavy.
You don't have a turntable in your living room that can just wheel the furniture out for you?
Oh, I wish, Mac. Ryan helped me move everything into the main space, and now I have a friend later that will have to move everything back into the room. So basically, in a nutshell,
in the room where it happens,
I've been getting a lot of takeout or getting stuff on the go because my current environment is a bit in shambles. So I did make a visit to my favorite cafe, Almond Butterfly, and treated myself for the 200th episode. I got some cupcakes and I'm drinking a strawberry matcha.
Love that.
And I'm drinking out of one of my favorite tumblers, some water, little flowers on it.
Cute.
So we're just keeping the vibes as cozy and uppity as possible. Well,
love that.
The world is upside down.
What you're saying is, Secretary Robinson, you have the floor.
Yes, I I had the
sitting
fresh floor.
on that the whole time you were talking.
Well, I've been sitting on my floor because my furniture is currently in. Anyways, is this just going to be, we're just going to do like Hamilton dad jokes
this is
the whole
be,
episode?
Hamilton puns from beginning to end. I love it. This is what you came here for. Are you not entertained?
That's right. That's right. But yes, at the end of our 100th, so we were jokingly saying what our 200th would be, and we joked saying, why not make it the Hamilton 2020 pro shot? And we all, after that recording, kind of went, why wouldn't we?
We said it in that very recording. We basically decided it on the spot. And the funny thing is that even though we've all, I believe, Mac, correct me if I'm wrong about this, we've all seen Hamilton live before, right?
I have seen it live as
well. None of us had seen the Disney Plus pro shot.
I had seen it once.
Oh, you did?
Because COVID was one of those things where it's like, let's give it a try.
Okay, at time of that recording, I don't think you'd seen it yet. I feel like we were all in agreement that we hadn't. But now, I watched it for the first time in the week leading up to this. Yeah,
same.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
So we all got to watch it, and this was directed by Thomas Kail and written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, based off the book Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow. And then it stars a whole bunch of people who have now gone on to have very successful careers, who we will all get into. But this is a musical, something that we know Ryan loves with all his heart.
I like music.
That's what I mean. You love it with all your heart.
Well, I wouldn't go that far,
but But what is our favorite song of the musical? And tell us a little bit about how you came to the show and kind of what are your experiences in this world of Hamilton. Jill, I'll let you go first.
Okay. So favorite song, I will say, having watched the pro shot, I have a new favorite song.
Ooh.
Because we'll get into this as the episode goes, but at SparkNotes version is I did find watching the pro shot I was very more intricately invested in characters and plotline than the 2 times I have seen it live. So we'll unpack that later in the episode. But I will say, okay, before I get into what my favorite song is, the songs that are constantly in my brain and head, and obviously that I like to sing occasionally too, is obviously there's Satisfied, there's Say No to This. I Will Always Be a Blubbering Mess and It's Quiet Uptown. But I want to say the song that packed a punch for me watching the pro shot, and then I'm like, damn, this is such a good piece for a performer, and it's such a good like micro side plot moment for this character ish, is One Last Time. I forget how much like the actor playing because I remember sitting in the theater both times I've seen it in live too. I had this moment, but again, as the piece goes on, you kind of can forget about it. But listening to it and watching it in the pro shot, when I watched it, it's such it packs a massive punch. Like I'm finding it hard to like articulate, but it's just
it really does. It's
being like the performer in that moment too, like the prowess that's needed to like, and it comes out of nowhere a little bit. Like you don't really think that Washington is gonna get his own song in this, and then all of a sudden you're gobsmacked by this character taking center stage for one last time, and it does feel like it's one last time. So that's gonna get my shout out.
A lot has changed in the world since that song was written, because we actually have a former president who did not want to teach them how to say goodbye, who kind of refused to say goodbye and held on to that job for as long as possible. So there's something nice and kind of cathartic about watching the man himself, who could have held on for that power as long as he, people would have continued to let him, deciding that no, we should have term limits. We should respect the democratic process. Yeah.
So that gets my shout out. One Last Time. Bam.
Love that.
Oh, and also, how do I come to the piece? Do you want me to answer that now, or?
Yes.
I actually came to this piece late in the game, to be honest. I remember being in theater school when it was really, really picking up speed, and everyone in my class had like listened to the soundtrack over and over and over again and knew all the words to everything. fun fact about me, and I've said this before on episodes, for someone who's a performer and a singer, like lyrics don't always stick with me, or like I always have to relearn lyrics, even to shows that I've been in. I don't know what it is. It's like I'm invested when I'm there, but then I like put it to bed when I don't have to be. So a lot of people in my class, again, were like obsessed, knew it from back to front. And it wasn't like I was avoiding it, but I was just kind of like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And then I treated myself to an afternoon of just listening to it through. And I was like, oh, damn, this is like going to be the musical of the century, because it's like, it's its own genre. It's defying this and that, whatever. And it's my type of music, like outside of theater, hip hop and like R&B, rap, all of those vibes are what I listen to. And so I was a little bit like, Jill, why were you so late to the game? But then, yeah, I saw my first stage production with my mom, literally 2 days before the world shut down, like before COVID. Blaine Krause was my Hamilton understudy. Amazing, like the epitome of young, scrappy, and hungry. And it was his first time going on stage as Hamilton, and that rippled throughout the whole piece. Thank you, Blaine. And then Ryan and I got a chance to see it through the lottery when it was in Toronto a while back. And yeah, I'll always just pop it on my iPhone every once in a while, you know, to vibe.
Love
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Love that. Ryan?
Wait. There's multiple questions here. Which one do you want me to answer first?
Song.
Well,
song
start with
first?
song and then tell us
Okay.
about your experience with the show.
My answer isn't Quiet Uptown, but I agree, Jill. That one makes me sob every time. It can't be my favorite because it's just, I'm too much of a mess listening to it for like, because there's like so many fun, better jumping songs in this. But like it is definitely up there. But I think unconventional choice, I'm gonna say, is Dear Theodosia.
That's mine.
Oh, really? Wow. I
Yes.
wasn't expecting anyone to. Okay, fine. I'll change and say Wait for It, I guess, because I could have sworn somebody was going to take Wait for It, which I think is probably the best song in the show. And either way, clearly I'm a Leslie Odom Jr. fan because these are my picks. But yeah, Dear Theodosia is just such a sweet, tender moment of these two men singing to their child who will come of age with our young nation. And it's just beautiful. It's so poignant.
Yeah.
And even if one of those children doesn't go on to die tragically, it's still just such a nice moment. But then that happens too, and it gets even worse. See other song. And then of course Wait for It is just, man, what a showcase of just the character of Burr, of Leslie's talents, at least in this version with the original cast. Just that song gets me every time.
Yeah.
Can I also just comment on Dear Theodosia again, because that was a poignant moment for me watching it through the pro shot. They're fathers, like, yes, they're founding fathers, but I love that scene because they're dads. They're daddies. Well, they're they're like, they have little kids. And again, we'll get into it as we go on, but I do find with the pro shot, like, there was a little bit, it was easier to find like the humans behind these like politicians by watching it through.
There is a cut reprisal of Dear Theodosia that didn't make it into the final musical, but you can hear test footage of it, which is after Theodosia Sr., who is Burr's wife, dies. He sings the song again as like a tender moment, explaining to his daughter that her mother has died. And then if that was still in there, that would also be really interesting because he has the line during the duel of "You will not make an orphan of my daughter." So knowing that he's also recently lost his wife, and that kind of would raise the stakes. I don't know why they cut it, probably just for time, but I think that would.
It's a long show. It's almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Mac? What's your favorite song?
Well, first round, tell us how you came to the show.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I, unlike Jill, who sat on it for a long time, I was pretty much a ground floor fan of it right out of the gate in 2016 when it was already a phenomenon by the time I found it, but it was like pretty early on. I was in my last year of undergrad at the time, and it was just like the biggest thing in theater. And I'm like, this sounds pretty much right up my alley. Let's check this out. I was trying to just listen to the soundtrack for a while, but I thought like it was so intricate, so much complexity in the lyrics. Often I listen to music while I'm like working and doing other stuff, and this is a show that I couldn't get anything else done while I was trying to listen to it to unpack the lyrics. And it was around this time that I discovered on YouTube people make animatics. I don't know if this is something that you or listeners are familiar with, but people make like sort of crudely drawn animations for musical theater songs.
Yes.
It's to kind of like make their own music videos that help tell the story if you're not located somewhere to actually see it performed live. So I got really into animatics for Hamilton specifically, and now I kind of use them anytime there's a new musical I want to introduce myself to that's not somewhere geographically convenient to go see. So there was at one time there was one really good collection of just the entirety of Hamilton through animatics. So I watched that and kind of felt like I saw this animated experimental film version of the musical Hamilton. So I've been a fan of it pretty much for a long time. I like Jill said, I've seen it in Toronto also twice, once with her after, like through the lottery, after things reopened in the pandemic, once before also the pandemic, both in Toronto. And it also comes up quite a bit in my personal research, my scholarly work, what it does, my dissertation focuses a lot on new trends and how history is represented in contemporary theater and drama, and of course, of which Hamilton is a bit of a flagship example of that. It's not actually one of my principal case studies, but I do make several references to it throughout my dissertation, and it's often my helpful go-to example when I'm explaining to someone what my dissertation is about, usually a non-scholar, because it's unlike the rest of my case studies, it's one that I trust they've at least heard of, if not seen themselves, so I can kind of unpack the premise using that. And so I have this wonderful volume, Hamiltome, as it is affectionately known to its fans. I treated myself to this on a Boxing Day at an Indigo Spirit at the mall where I used to work when I was scoping out to like, this is going to go on sale on Boxing Day and then I'm going to nab it. So I did. And I love it because, one, it's just like a beautiful volume. It has like these big glossy, but not glossy because it's like textured, but like lots of photos from the production. It has these annotations, these marginal notes by Lin-Manuel Miranda, kind of unpacking the history behind it, his writing process, his influences, some just fun, jokey commentary. I have read this cover to cover multiple times, including in preparation for this. So,
nice.
I have a lot of thoughts. I will say last kind of thought is, while I was very much on the hype train early on, some of my feelings about this show have maybe become a little less enchanted now that the novelty is worn off and I can kind of think about it a little more critically. And maybe we'll talk more about that a little later, but doesn't need to sully this intro.
Nice.
How about you, Mac?
Well, I mean, song-wise, I was so hard to pick because again, a good sung-through show. You got good stuff in both acts. Act 1, we already talked about Dear Theodosia, which is a great one. I also love You'll Be Back because
you're a white guy at karaoke. Of course, you love that song.
Well, it's not even that. It's the fascinating depiction of George III because he is such a weird historical figure where, because he had so much mental health issues, we've seen him played so many different ways. Like Queen Charlotte on Netflix plays him very sympathetically. You then have the play Madness of King George, which plays him kind of manic and wild. And then you have this one that plays him almost like a Machiavellian, mustache twirling villain with slight homages to his kind of manic mental health injury. Because like historically, there are many times where they spoke about where he would just speak for like 8 hours at a time and would be frothing at the mouth. So Jonathan Gross spittle just flying. So I was like, great little touch there. Also, just that manic da 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 da. It's like just this man going off as he's trying to comprehend what is happening around him. So the layers of that song are actually a lot of fun because it is a fun song. But his character is so much more fascinating when you actually dig into who he was, just as a historical figure, and then also just seeing the fact that he's such a blank chalkboard for people to really just kind of continually reinterpret. Like Queen Elizabeth I is always portrayed in a very glorified, powerful light because of her place in history. You know, James the First of England is always produced, like the Witch Guy with the Scottish play. There are certain stories that kind of have their spaces already set out. George III is someone who just keeps getting reinvented every time somebody wants to use him in like some historical biopic somewhere on there. Like, yeah, well, we can just kind of redo him again. So it's a fun song. Act 2 is where the show really shines for me. So I have In the Room Where It Happens, in Washington on Your Side. So because both are just, I love a good political maneuvering song. I mean, Jill and I both know I'm a very big fan of 1776, the musical. And this is right in that wheelhouse of the political machinations that go on to make things happen, and just the back end deals and who's outsmarting who. Lin-Manuel just talked about how Washington on Your Side is very much his homage to She's a Diamond from Evita, which is where Perón is talking and defending Evita, but really his cabinet's going, yeah, she's the one who's kept you where you are, so watch your back, because she's fading and so are you. And it's the same type of thing, so it's a fun little homage there. But then also, just Room Where It Happens is such a banger of a song, and you really do get the angst and frustration of Burr being cut out of the room when he so badly wants to be involved and be a part of it. And he's playing politic and trying to be as polite and as sportsmanly as possible, waiting his turn and being ever so patient to be invited into the room. And people just keep fucking him over left, right, and center. And it's like, I get your frustration, sir, because I would be Burr, not Hamilton, where I'd be one playing by the rules, waiting for my moment to kind of just slide right in and make it happen. And being frustrated, being like, for fuck's sakes, Hamilton, like, get out of the way. Like, you're just screwing me over left, right, and center. Go away. So I totally get Burr. I'm a Burr fan. So, yes.
And how did you come to it, Mac? What was your experience?
So I heard about it when it was off Broadway. I watched the trailers and listened to some of the tracks, and I am not a rap nor am I a hip hop fan. So right away I was like, what the hell? Here I am expecting this really great kind of Les Miserables, sung through history musical, and I'm getting this rap musical thing, and I'm like, no,
so you
not
really
for me.
feel.
Yeah.
So, but then it didn't go away, and I'm like, okay, so it's not going away. So let's dive into it more. And the more I dove into it, I was like, okay, this is interesting.
Brilliant.
I still don't love it. It's a very interesting show. I don't love it, mainly because I think it's a very flawed show that kind of got overhyped because of how new it was at the time. Even though Lin-Manuel had already kind of done this type of thing within the Heights, so it wasn't totally new, but people were just so like, oh my god. So I think it kind of got a bit overblown in that sense, but I really do admire the work that it is and the impact it had on the theater scene. So it's like Rent. I don't like Rent either. Jill knows this, but
we have opposite tastes, Mac.
Well,
that's okay.
I'm not.
We do agree on Les
Mis, though. Musical theater person, so yeah. So same thing with Rocky Horror. Rocky Horror is a show I never also gravitated to either.
Those are all the shows I've been in, Mac.
I know, Jill. I know. But it's one of those things where it's like, even though I don't love the show, I will absolutely appreciate and admire it for its impact that it had on the on the theatrical scene and on theatrical history itself as another milestone step as the tree grows. So, is it my favorite? No, I did. I was able to get a good rush seat ticket to go see it when it was revived in Toronto after COVID. I was like 8 rows from the front in the center, between two couples. Both couples were like sobbing by the end, and I'm just sitting there going, "Yeah, solid piece," and they're like bawling over there. So so it's an interesting show. It definitely is an interesting show. I will say the sound mixing was off when I saw it live, so it really did hinder my enjoyment because I'm not someone who knows these lyrics inside and out. So seeing it live and like, I know my history, so I can follow what's happening. But for the older couple behind me, who clearly were like season ticket holders, who did not know the lyrics and who are obviously having a hard time understanding the lyrics, they were getting frustrated behind me. So I definitely appreciate the pro shop more, and we'll get into that. as well, because I agree with Jill. I got more out of it watching the pro shot than I did seeing it live. So
Fair.
yeah, but let's get into
Right.
this piece. So, what are our thoughts on the original Broadway cast? Let's first dive into kind of just ensemble generally, and then if we want to highlight, say, one or two people, we can certainly do that. So, Ryan, who stood out to you?
Yeah, so I'll just say across the board, I think this original Broadway cast, pretty much everyone in the cast is the definitive version of each role, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that there aren't maybe someone else who does it on some tour or even an understudy perhaps who maybe does a better job than one of them. But I just think when I picture any one of these characters in isolation, it is with this cast. And having not seen it really fully with this cast until now, that says a lot, that even just through listening in the album, I picture, and I obviously have seen a lot of photography of it or clips from it, but yeah, this is, everyone is, yeah, Renee Elise Goldsberry is Angelica Schuyler. Philippa Sue is Eliza. There's just no contest about like so many of these roles. And yeah, I know a lot of people are a little lukewarm about Lin himself, preferring his writing to his acting or his singing. I'm aware of that. And I won't necessarily disagree with it, but my experiences of seeing this show live have actually really made me appreciate his take on the role, because I won't say which or even say which time or shout out an individual performer to make them feel bad, because that's not the point of this point that I'm making. But one of the two times that I saw it live, the Alexander that I had really did not bring the energy. Unfortunately, he just seemed kind of bored the whole time. Maybe he was having an off night. I don't know. But there was nothing in him that I would describe as scrappy or hungry. And those are the two character traits you really do need to sell this role. And Lin absolutely brings those attributes. And I even think that the uniqueness of his wiry singing voice is a big part of why.
Yeah.
And yeah, do you want to?
Can I add to that
yeah,
too,
please.
Matt? I mean, Brian, I you're probably getting to this too, but like him being the writer and Hamilton writing all of these things, and like there are moments, especially in this pro shot, where it's like, oh, these are words that Lin wants to get out through his own journey being a playwright, and he's using Hamilton. There's that kind of side subtext going on too, right?
There's a funny thing in here. There are multiple like marginal notes in this where he describes a certain line or lyric as being, this is the most autobiographical thing I've ever wrote. That line right there, I'm like, well, one, you've said that about another line already, and two, have you not seen In the Heights? I would have thought that is the most autobiographical thing you wrote. but yes, so clearly he put a lot of himself into it. He probably knew or was at least hoping that he would be allowed to play the lead, or he wrote it with his own performance skills and style and energy in mind. And it shows in the performance. He really does bring it. And he just feels like the perfect fusion of himself as not just an actor, but the creator of this with the role. I'll say similarly that not that Daveed Diggs needs me to validate his talent, but I had a similar experience with the other time that I saw it, where the actor playing Lafayette and Jefferson was not able to hack the speed rapping, unfortunately. And yeah, like, and this is another thing, I'm going to be referencing these marginal notes a lot in here, but there's like multiple times in there when anytime there's a Lafayette or Jefferson speed rapping, especially in Guns and Ships, like Lin mentions in the marginalia there that he's like, I only felt like I could get away with writing these rhymes so quick and so rapid because I knew I had Daveed doing it, that they were written for his talents in mind. And he is amazing. And watching him in this, everything is so spot on and perfect. And I have seen other performers not be able to nail that. I have seen people at karaoke not able to nail it. So yes, he's fantastic. But of course, you know what I'm going to say. If you're asking who my MVP of the cast is, it's Leslie Odom Jr. Okay, at least once a week, I have to watch not the whole movie, but just the last scene of One Night in Miami when he sings "A Change Is Gonna Come." I watch it on YouTube and then just make the face that Malcolm X makes at the very end, and then go on with my business. That is just, he's one of our most talented performers, singers, actors. He's incredible, and yes, this is the role that really put him on the map. And God, is he incredible in it! So yes,
he's great in Law and Order too.
Is it Law and Order?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he comes back repeatedly in SVU as like a black priest / lawyer.
Okay.
Okay.
Usually on
Neat.
race-related cases. So, and he always kills it in those episodes. So,
Don't.
yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, those are my thoughts on the cast very generally. How about you two?
Jill?
Yeah. So, and this is just right? Shouting out cast.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ensemble cast,
So-
the whole gang. Yeah.
Obviously, I think the OG ensemble as a whole is stunning. Like, to the smallest role, which technically there isn't any in this because
Samuel Seabury.
yeah, well, like, no, seriously though, like
I know.
everyone who's in the ensemble punches out in some shape or form, but even like there is the underbelly of these like neutral bodies doing contemporary movements alongside, like that tells a story. Ask any dancer watching Hamilton, there's a whole other physique narrative that's going on, right? So like, I will say, of the 2 times that I've seen it live as well, there was obviously a cast cohesion because this piece demands that regardless of where it's happening. But absolutely watching this and even knowing that like Ariana DeBose, right, is the bullet, and now look at where she is
Oscar
now, right?
winner
So a lot
Ariana DeBose.
yeah, so like a lot of these folks, right, are at the time were probably the strongest folks on Broadway, right? That got to be in this cast. And like that is so true across the board. So just a shout out to everyone in general, like what a phenomenal first package for Lin-Manuel Miranda to kind of sink his teeth in, right? And have back his piece here. Shout outs, particularly Anthony Ramos as John Laurens and Philip Hamilton. I respect the heck out of Anthony's acting. And just as I've seen like interviews and stuff of him, just like such a genuine, kind person, it seems. And like that empathy playing both of these characters, literally arguably characters that are extremely close to our protagonist for different relationship, obviously. And you can obviously tell that like Anthony and Lin-Manuel have history together because of In the Heights, etc. But there was just such a genuine empathy that Anthony cascaded through both Laurens and obviously Philip. And when the death scene of Philip is just again like but like there's just like the blubbering mess of, and again him playing like a 9-year-old child, but then also like a scrappy soldier. Again, it's called Range, darling. There's also a lot of the like the modern day politics that are trickled in through this as well, and like advocating for the Black voice that I think Anthony like really, really, really emphasizes. There's the moment where they're talking about the I'm paraphrasing, but like the first Black
militia,
militia, and just him backing that moment. I was just like, oh my God, you're literally like standing for everything in history up to 2016 in that moment. Like, there was just a lot of layers that I think he brought to both characters, but then also brought to himself. Which is hard to do sometimes as the actor. We're vehicles playing these parts, but if you can also tap into yourself alongside and infusing these parts, you can take it even further. So I felt like definitely he gets my shout out there. So I want to shout out Philippa, Renee, and Jasmine as the Schuyler sisters, as a trio. The 2 times I've seen it live, the sisters were not cohesive. And I think it's imperative, regardless if you have all of the actors who normally play, right? Or you have understudies, that trio has to pop off. And like the couple times that I've seen it live, both times I think there was an understudy peppered in, and some of them were like they were all understudies, and there wasn't a chemistry there. And I do think, as much as this is a founding fathers musical, obviously near the ending, it's the women that are also the underbelly and supporting and creating this making the story go the way that it is. And so I think those actors playing the sisters have to be on. And like Philippa, Renee, and Jasmine, like it literally seemed like they were in diapers together, you know, like there was just that familial bond established off the top, and then that allowed us to sink even further into their individual journeys. So they get my package shout out there.
Nice.
Fair.
Mac,
Fair.
how about you?
Well, I mean, obviously, you got to shout out Oscar winner Ariana DeBose, where she did this role right before going into West Side Story, where she ultimately won her Oscar. So great seeing her kind of just in the background doing her thing there. And then we've already talked about Leslie Odom Jr. As I said, I identify more with Burr than I do Hamilton, just as a character. Like Burr and I can see where he's playing at and kind of get it. And then my other two, I guess, would go to, first of all, Jonathan Groff, as I said, King George III. He just steals the scene every time he comes out there. Just that wonderful, cocky, bad guy British. He's like Jason Isaacs in that horrible Mel Gibson, The Patriot movie, where he plays like the horrible, like British lieutenant who's just purposely evil and totally historically inaccurate, burning people in churches.
It takes a lot to be the worst person in a Mel Gibson movie that's not Mel Gibson.
That's right. Yeah, so like it's once again like just him full on just owning this bratty British Gilbert and Sullivan-esque type character and having fun with it and having the audience get in on it too. It's great. It's fun. It's a great performance there. And then also Christopher Jackson as George Washington. His final moment when he's going to leave. It's heartbreaking. And just that fatherly figure of Washington leading the piece throughout, and throughout all of Act 1 just being Hamilton, stop it, smarten up, play smart, work with people, you know, get what you want, be smarter about it, don't just piss people off. You know, I really enjoyed his performance. He really was kind of that father of the nation figure. And I mean, when I saw it live, I forget who played my Washington that, but I came in going, that guy could play Mufasa in The Lion King. Like he just has that same energy of like a Mufasa, where it's like just the way, like just the voice type. It's like, I can easily see them going between those two roles. Like you could do this show and rep with Lion King and cast Mufasa and George Washington as the same actor and have no problems whatsoever. It's great. So Christopher Jackson just having that great paternal energy of the piece, and really endearing Washington to you. So when he is gone, you do understand why Hamilton kind of loses his rudder, and ultimately spins out the way he does. So those are all my shout outs. What were our favorite production or design elements? Jill, what do you think?
Again, this is a pretty packed package. I didn't know where I was going with that. A pretty packed package. So a lot of things were checking boxes for me. But I do want to shout out the costumes. Because I think, again, I mentioned it in my ensemble. I just like that there's a subtlety to it all, right? It's like, basically, you're donning this particular colored velour blazer, and that is the indication that you are this character. Very much like Hercules Mulligan and James Madison, that track. And also the actor playing those roles too usually has like particular gestures or like the way they carry themselves as well that differentiates. But that's a perfect example of like same actor, but look at how subtle, but different this jacket type is, and boom, there's your whole thing. So, and then again, it goes down to like the ensemble. They're just donning neutral, sort of corseted or like period specific undergarments because they're the under support of the next sort of tier of character. So I just find like dramaturgically the piece really comes out through the costuming. I also think like the having the ensemble all in these neutral sort of cream colors as well, it kind of reminds me of like the letters and the multiple like papers, pamphlets, like there's a theme here, right? And so like they're constantly strewn on this stage. And I guess just while I'm on the stage, so costumes, number one. Number two, I want to mention is the bare subtlety of the set. Because I think, again, it's just sort of like wooden period specific scaffolding that can essentially be the play space for any sort of office, any sort of outdoor. It's giving like both of those vibes. But then it also kind of just looks like the back of a theater or the wing of a theater. Like literally we're waiting in the wings for you. So again, I think dramaturgically, the set is like this subtle masterpiece. And so is the costuming. That is where I'm going to leave that. Dramaturgically masterful.
I will piggyback off you, Jill, with the set, because my shout out is the turntable in particular.
Love a good turntable.
Well, once again, Lin-Manuel Miranda loved Les Mis, and so he has said his set was partially inspired by the OG production of Les Mis that he saw, that what was notable for having this ever-turning turntable, which Ryan, you and I know ties even further back to Nicholas Nickleby with the RSC. So layers upon layers here. Anyway, but just this show's so fluid in its motions because it's covering so much time and space. And so the turntable is a really useful theatrical device for that. And then the moments when it's stopped, like Dear Theodosia and Burn, it makes those moments even more powerful because the turntable moves so often that when it's not moving, you go, okay, this is a clear moment of importance that it's stopping the world for a moment to really sit and hone and be in on it.
In the eye of a hurricane.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
We're having fun.
We are. We totally are. So I'd say the turntable was my production shout out there. Ryan, what about you?
So it's similar to what both of you have said about the set, but I'll give a little special hat tip to the choreography, which is choreographed by Andy Blankenbuehler. And it's just such an iconic part of what the show is and the aesthetic. I think I struggle for a bit to think of a good answer to this question about production element, because I'm pretty sure the production elements, nothing is changed anytime the show is done. It's a
Frozen show.
It's Frozen. So what I saw in this pro shot of the original production with the Broadway cast is pretty much identical in those respects to what I saw both times I saw it live. The cast, I had a lot more thoughts because of like everyone is different from when I saw it live. But I do think, such an iconic element of this show. Really, the flavor and the character is just the way everybody moves, and the turntable is a big part of that. The sparseness of the set is part of that, but it's never feels frenetic, but it's constantly in motion. And then, like you said, Mac, they really find the right moments to keep that motion. And one thing, just a little kind of moment, I don't think I've ever noticed before in either of my previous viewings of the live version, but I noticed it here, is the bullet just missing Hamilton at the beginning of Stay Alive. I never caught that before, but we have Ariana DeBose, the case of this production, as the bullet, kind of going right at him at the beginning of Stay Alive and just missing him slightly. He will stay alive for a bit, but it is coming for him. And so it's just like little things like that. I'm sure you could comb through this and pick out so many details. And one kind of tiny thing, this wasn't big enough that I wanted it to be my whole shout out, but I will say, not the whole lighting design necessarily, but one funny lighting cue in the song What Comes Next, when King George says, "I'm so blue," the lights turn blue. That I had forgotten that was a thing, and it made me chuckle all over again.
Yeah. Love that. Then we have weakest element of the production. I don't know if we'll have much. I do have something, but I'm going to save my weakest element for a future question because we will be talking about it, and I want to save that particular bit for then. So I would just say the show is really strong, but there is one really big element of the show that I just go doesn't quite hit the way I think it should. So, Jill?
So my weakest element, I guess, kind of, I know this is production specific questions, but this is more so maybe in the character development and or the table work that Lin-Manuel Miranda wanted for these characters. But I'm going back to the Schuyler sisters.
Or Peggy.
I feel like, because this is true in the 2 live iterations I've seen too, and it was also true in watching this pro shot. There is more of like, and I don't think it means like we need to rewrite anything, but I think there's more intensity that each actor playing, and I don't just mean Peggy, I mean Peggy and Mariah, like the pop out females in this piece.
Mhm.
There's more of an intensity that I think can be popped a bit more. And it's interesting because, for example, I'll just use like Renee as our Angelica. She's the best Angelica I've seen. She will be the Angelica. Yeah. But even watching the pro shot, I've obviously listened to that Satisfied over and over and over again. But watching the pro shot, I'm like, oh, it lackluster for me a little bit. And again, I don't think it's anything to do in Renee's performance, and it's anything to do in the writing per se, but I think it must have just been like a collective, I don't know, agreement to not push these women a little bit. Even like in Burn, like Philippa's Eliza. I mean, I will say there was one live iteration I saw that our Eliza did get a bit grittier with that song, and I really, really appreciated it. But there's a lot of personal betrayal that all of these women go through in this piece. And yes, I think they are serving as the underbelly, and they are serving as tangential to the sort of political framework that's happening. But there's a reason, I think, why there's the lyric, we're going to include women in the sequel work.
Yeah.
I need to see that there's that spice, there's that longing, there's that like push for, why do we have to wait till the sequel? Like, I've been cheated on. I can't be with the man that I actually love. I am being abused by my husband. Like, there's a lot of talk about politics, political barricading that women went through during this time. And I think Lin is alluding to it in the writing, and I think it is there. But I just feel like in all 3 times that I've seen this show, I need it to be a little bit more of a spark, so that even at the end, when we get that Eliza built the orphanage and Eliza is telling his story, and even I forgot that at the end when they meet in heaven and like Hamilton brings her downstage and says, look what you did, or look what we did. That's how I interpret that, right? Of her doing the like, oh my goodness, like our legacy. But like, she was a paramount part of that. You know what I mean? I don't know.
She has a lot of history that gets brushed over in this show.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, all three women are very different. They're all sort of like archetypes of that time. They're all sort of like paving. Like I said, the material is all there. I think it's in the like acting of it. Talk about young, scrappy, and hungry. Like, I just want a bit, I feel like I'm a broken record because I say this to a lot of like women we unpack in these pieces. I'm like, what's the grit? But like, you know, in a very male dominated world that this was, especially back like in the day, I don't know, just so
it's almost like we should do a spin-off show just focused on the Schuyler sisters. So we get their full story on their own, because there's so much history that doesn't get, I mean, we'll get more into the Schuyler sisters in a bit. So I may put a pin in this.
Like, it's still an improvement over 1776, where the women are just there to either be Ghost Abigail Adams being like, good job, husband, you're doing great, or sing the song about how Thomas Jefferson is very good at oral sex, which is very concerning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, we've definitely, but it's like I said, I think the material is perfect. I think like how he's sewn these into how he's sewn these women alongside Alexander's journey is perfectly written. It's just the execution of it.
I agree. I'm not saying
that. But it's funny, and it's funny, if I would have just seen this pro shot and not the live versions, I might just be like, oh, that's probably just what this. But the fact that every time I've seen it, I'm like, this must be a cast agreement that we aren't pushing, no pun intended, the envelope a little bit more with all of these women. And I kind of want, it's just grit, like a bit more grit. That's it.
Fair.
because I want that line earned of include woman in the sequel.
Work.
Anyways, that's on that.
Ryan?
Yeah, so in terms of the production itself, this is pretty much just the platonic ideal of this show. It's all kind of, the cast is great. All the things are frozen, like you said. So there's nothing to kind of critique about the production itself, in my opinion. I alluded earlier to the fact that I have become a little less enchanted with the structure of the whole thing as time has gone on, and I've thought more about it and read other criticism. And there are things about it that maybe don't feel as radical as they seemed when this show was new. It is very much, and I blame Chernow for this, but I do think Miranda could have done more with this, is that this is just a very uncritical appeal to how great the founding fathers were and what they built. It really does lean into this great man view of history. The big tagline of the show, that it's America today telling the story about America back then, or possibly reverse those, is, I get it that it is using rap music and a very diverse cast. But aside from that genre and the racialized bodies of the individuals performing it, there's nothing really about the text that actually does talk back to that history. Even the many allusions to "we're going to end slavery," which comes up a lot, is a thread that just completely gets dropped and never really does get turned against people like Jefferson. We have the one line during the cabinet battle that's about, we know who does the planting. And there was supposed to be a third cabinet battle that, again, got cut. Lots of good stuff got cut here that was supposed to address this kind of more head on. But it's really these things. Sorry, Jill, you want to comment?
I would argue that I think the genre and the use of rap and R&B is a way of combating what you're saying. I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't really think it succeeds at that, though. I think it gives the aesthetics of that without actually interrogating anything, in my opinion.
But there's so many mentions of notorious, no pun intended, notorious rappers, artists that essentially are the founding fathers of that whole genre and build up, right? That I just wouldn't be surprised if, for example, why something like those things have been cut, if eventually it got to a point where it's the form itself is talking back, is making that comment. Maybe thinking that that's strong enough.
And
because I'm not going to lie, in the cabinet battles, the fact that they are strewn the way that they're strewn, and there's so many Easter eggs of, like I said, rap and R&B vibes there, that I feel is a massive clapback. There's so many things happening. It's not just us getting the information through rap. Anyways, I'm just going to bat for that.
You're allowed to disagree. This is where I am with it, that I do think it's not enough, in my opinion, that it really does. There's so much about just what a swell chap Hamilton was, and he wanted to free the slaves. But most historians seem to agree that the reason why he didn't have any slaves isn't because he was morally against it, but because he was poor and couldn't afford to own human beings. And there's just a lot of things like that. There's actually something that I noticed in this pro shot when Lawrence has his first line about something about freeing slaves when they first meet in either Nonstop or even as early as Aaron Burser, where you can notice Lin under his breath saying, "That's right. Yeah." It's subtle, but it's there, and it's preserved forever in this pro shot. And there kind of just is this pat myself on the back smugness to a lot of this kind of very baseline status quo preserving liberalism that this show is very much, I get, a product of the optimistic Obama years. And we kind of have since seen how a lot of that didn't really create as much hope and change as we were hoping for, and that there was an immediate backlash to the admittedly not very much vigorous political radicalism of the Obama years that somehow was still too radical for a big part of the country. I wonder why, even though policy-wise kind of accomplished very little. And I just think overall this is a product of its time. And that time, even though it's not that long ago, kind of feels like a million years ago. There's more I could get into, but I'm sure if you're watching this on YouTube, there's probably a million video essays in the recommended videos that go into all of these things in more detail. You can watch one or all of those. But I do think that this is a show that presents radicalism more than I think it actually achieves anything all that radical, while still being great. And all the love and respect that I said before, I think is still there. But these are problems that I think only get more pronounced with time as we move further and further away from that spark of Obama-era optimism in which it was birthed and written.
Fair.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. I mean, like, yeah, like it just feels like every time we do a political piece about the founding fathers, it's radical in its, or perceived as radical in its time, but then as history goes forward, it doesn't quite have that same bite. But then I'm also reminded of the Barbie movie, where it's like where I think it's Rita Perlman's character talked about how, you know, mothers stand still so daughters can look back and see how far things have gone. So, like, you know, 1776 was big in its time, going against Nixon and kind of highlighting the fact that they hadn't moved far enough into like post 1776 to like that point in the late 60s with the civil rights movement. And then, you know, now we get Hamilton.
Yeah.
That now looks back on 1776 and goes, look, I can go even further than you.
Yeah. So I do think 1776, for all of its faults, though, actually tries a little harder to address the complications of slavery. It doesn't do a good job of it, in my opinion, but it at least makes it the kind of 11th hour complication, whereas it kind of just completely gets dropped from Hamilton, despite feeling like it should be so prominent given the voices that are telling the story. Yeah.
Again, I argue through the form and the genre and the physique that it's absolutely clapping back on so many rungs just without having to say it, which I think is more powerful.
I think I would prefer if it said it, because I don't think it actually, it doesn't really
I would agree with Ryan a bit on this, just because, like, Washington's portrayed very patriotically and fatherly, which, don't get me wrong, I love the performance of it. But we know that he took teeth from his slaves to make his dentures.
And Hamilton has a lot of problems with Jefferson's slavery because that's his enemy, but he never seems to have anything to say about Washington's.
And, you know, Jefferson always promised, I will free my slaves, but then he would get into debt and never would. So there's a lot of these historical figures that but once again, you know, as 1776 says, you know, we're not demigods, we're human, we are flawed. So once again, I would have loved the show to get more into the flawed grayness of these people versus just damning them, going, they were all horrible men who did nothing good in the world. It's like, no, they're gray human beings who are fighting for what they felt was right. Even though even though they are very flawed when we look back on them now. So I would have loved a bit more gray in them, where, like, maybe they do say some things that are a little bit off color, a bit off the mark, where we all go, ooh, Jefferson, what is that?
Well, don't even get me started. Our Sally Hemings shout out, as Lynn,
I was about to say, they just shouted Sally Hemings in there.
Well, that's the thing. He called. So there's the one line. It's just read it to me, Sally, when Jefferson shows up and what did I miss? And he has a letter from Washington, and he asks one of his companions to read it, and by saying read it to me, Sally, it's heavily implying that it's Sally Hemings. And and then Lynn has the note in here about how there's our Sally Hemings shout out. That's all he has to say about it. And I'm like, her entire presence in this musical is smiling while she reads a letter to Jefferson that you're needed in Washington. And like, she's not smiling, be like, good, get the hell out of Virginia because you're needed in New York. It's just, it's icky. There's a lot of kind of things in here that you had, you decided you were going to do one Sally Hemings shout out, and this is what you decided to do with it. Not great.
He took the shot, Ryan. He took the shot.
He threw away that shot, in my opinion.
Hey.
There you go. All right, let's get to the next question, though. Would we recommend this pro shot over seeing the live show? Ryan, where do you stand on this?
Yeah.
Would you put this in a syllabus somewhere in like one of your classes?
You're like, it's been in the syllabus of my classes.
Has it been? It's been the syllabus of one of your classes, Jill?
Yeah, it was. I can't remember which one, but
I would. I can think of, I know you always ask me the question this way, and it's been a while since we've done one of these panel reviews with that particular question. This is Hamilton just in general is a piece that, like I said, it comes up in my research if I was ever designing a special topics course about, like, built around my research focuses. I think even though I said it's not one of my major case studies for what I'm writing about, I would maybe use Hamilton as like a palette introduction kind of like, yes, this is a show that you're probably familiar with, but let's actually talk about it and examine it and use it as like an entrance point to a lot of these frameworks for analysis that we'll get into as the course goes on. I would also, if I'm teaching a course on just contemporary American theater or even the history of American theater, yeah, regardless of what one thinks about Hamilton, it has had a monumental impact on American theater. And I think it kind of, at least where we are right now, if I were to teach a course like that tomorrow, I think it would be the end point of, yes, there are certainly going to be things after this. If it was like, I guess, a full American history, theater history course, more so than a contemporary course, I would probably want to add more recent things than Hamilton, because Hamilton's coming up on almost a decade now. But yeah, and just, yeah, I would have students read it. I would have them maybe listen to the soundtrack while they read it. But, you know, you could just watch this pro shot if you're subscribed to Disney Plus. Not going to make the students subscribe to Disney Plus if they're not already, because that's just mean. But yeah, I think I would encourage people to watch this version, because as we've said, I think ad nauseum at this point, this is the definitive version of it, crystallized in amber this way. If to the other kind of part of this question of watching it on Disney Plus versus seeing it on stage. That's tough. So I think my answer to it isn't to not see it on stage, because I do think it is there. Obviously, there's nothing like the magic of live theater, and there is a lot of great energy that comes with the stage version. I do think that, this is a show that works very well with a camera, that we do have some great camera work, some great zoom ins. We're capturing moments. When I saw it the first time, I got the cheapest possible tickets, and I was sitting on bar stools in the back of the theater. And yeah, I think there is a lot that you miss sort of from that vantage point, even though you have the full scoped out and you can see the amazing choreography and the movement. There's a lot of nuances in the faces and the performances that you do really, I appreciated having this close up view on. And there's just, I guess, little things that are captured in this version that I don't recall seeing in any of the live versions. And one of them that I thought was quite affecting, that I wasn't expecting, and it's not even on the album, but during Helpless, when Hamilton has his little soliloquy in there where he talks to Eliza, I don't have a dollar to my name, but all that. When he gets to the part about his mother, he starts getting emotional in a way that isn't captured on the album. And like, I never noticed that in either of the live versions, that like, and I don't even know if that's something that Lin did every night, or if just like saying these words makes him feel that way. But the version we have preserved in this pro shot captures that. And it's a quite sort of beautiful, affecting moment. So yeah, the cast is amazing. It's the definitive version of this production. Tickets for this show have always been very expensive unless you get the $10 Founding Father lottery, which we did the second time, Jill and I. It's hard to make a case for why you need to see this show live now that this version exists. It's not the same as how I feel about something like Doubt, which I've said many times, is now that we have sort of the perfect movie of it, I don't need to see more productions of the stage version, because this is the stage version. It is a very well done pro shot of the best possible version of the stage version, and it captures that theatricality. I never want to see a movie musical adaptation of Hamilton as long as I live. But because we have this, hopefully it'll be a bulwark against them ever actually doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair. Oh yeah, cringe. I don't want to see that
either. How about you two? Thoughts about this question?
Jill?
Yeah. Okay, so I agree with Ryan. I don't necessarily say watch the pro shot over seeing the show live, but if you have to only watch one, watch the pro shot. Yeah. I find like as a average audience member, especially as an actor or a performer, theater practitioner, and then also as like maybe like a high school or university kid studying, you know, this chunk of history, watch this pro shot. Because like I think Ryan already mentioned, like this pro shot, like with the camera angles used, you get a really lovely, it kind of acts as another character I found I was way more invested in and interested in learning through watching the pro shot than when I did see it live. And I think part of that is, yes, I've praised how many wonderful dramaturgical layers there is in the costuming, in the choreo, in the set, in the, you know, the nuances of all the characters on stage. But because of that, it is a lot watching it live. You get distracted often, I would say, because you want to take in this like super lovely, meaty movement piece. But then, you know, if your vibes are there, then you might be missing the speed wrap that's happening. And that's quite clever. But when you have it scoped the way that it is in the pro shot, you're sort of tailored, like your focus is tailored to what you're seeing, right? And we've broken down pro shots like this before, but I think very in particular with this piece, it's of all of the pro shots that we've reviewed on the Cup, I would say this one in particular, it's imperative to see this pro shot, especially if you've seen the live, because again, you don't have to go and see Hamilton live multiple times. Many folks will, because it is lovely to just be in the room where it happens and to just watch live theater at its blasted at its full capacity. But with this piece for sure, but the pro shot really like allows you to sink in. Like I felt more emotion in It's Quiet Uptown. I felt more relationship between Eliza and Hamilton, and just stuff that I know that I missed. And I've seen it twice live, right?
What did you miss?
Seriously. And even that whole number. So I would definitely recommend seeing this for sure. I want to say overseeing it, because obviously experiencing it live, but definitely watch this pro shot.
And I'll even add to that, Jill, because like I as I admitted earlier, both times that I saw it live, there was at least one player in the cast who I thought was kind of weak and like not. So yes, there is magic to seeing it live, and you kind of do get that whole overwhelming experience of it. But it just takes one kind of not great actor to sink the ship in a lot of ways. And the fact that it is just all of the best actors who've ever done this show doing this version, that, I think that alone is a good case for why it's worth watching this, whether or not that's your only encounter with the show or just one of many, that you deserve to see it with this cast, not just on the album, but actually performing for you.
Yeah. How about you, Mac? Where do you stand?
I stand on seeing this pro shot more than seeing it live, honestly. Like there are a few shows where I go, seeing it live is better. Les Mis is a show I always say go see live. It's the impact of seeing it live just blows the concerts away. Don't get me wrong, the concerts are great. They all have great singers in them.
But they're concerts. They're not the full production.
Yeah,
and
not
the movie is not Les Mis.
No.
Don't even get me started.
And I mean, even seeing the pro shot of Miss Saigon of the 25th anniversary West End production of that, which they just filmed live from the West End, was fine. But everybody who's seen it live just says seeing the fall of Saigon with the helicopter live is a much more visceral experience than watching it cinematically on a TV screen. This, Jill, as you said, because the lyrics are coming at you so fast, and because there is such a high risk, don't get me wrong, sound designers, love you all dearly, but the sound mixing, especially if it's a touring production, won't always be right because you're moving venues so often.
Yeah.
That the sound levels could be off. And because you're not in your home base, you're now having to adjust on the fly sometimes, which means the levels don't quite sit right, which then means you're missing lyrics, which happened to me when I saw it.
Yeah.
Like, and it totally undermined my experience versus sitting at home, watching it on my TV with the subtitles on, getting to see everything the way that it allows you to focus in on things, really connect with the lyrics. I would just say this is an example of where a pro shot is stronger than seeing it live. And also because this is a show where this OG cast was so tight, because they had gone from the workshops to off Broadway to Broadway, this is a really good example of a show where the OG cast, as Ryan said, they are the core, they are the base, and you need them there to really understand how this piece was meant to be seen. Because Lin-Manuel is a writer who is writing and performing in it. He wrote with particular voices in mind, as all writers do. So when you're having so Ryan actually said it's Daveed Diggs playing what's his name, Lafayette and Jefferson. Both roles that are very hard to do. It's like watching somebody play the role of Amy in Company. That role was written for that particular actress that Sondheim really fell in love with. Not that he was actually like romantically in love, but just as his artistic muse. Like, there's a reason why Not Getting Married Today, Jill, as you know, as a song, it's so fast, and it's because that actress could do it at that particular speed really well. Yeah. And so anybody else who's now done it struggles to get that tempo where it needs to be because it's that hard. And Daveed Diggs has that same talent of these roles are written for that voice.
He's got the technical, practical brilliance.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Oh, that scene.
Yeah.
So
that whole scene and the prowess behind that rap. Yeah. Mic drop, no pun intended. I get turned on every time. I'm like, Daveed, you could just I just want him to like rap my whole life. Just
there you go. But yeah, so I mean, like, that's kind of where I stand is like it seeing it live is fun, but unless you're really familiar with the work and like know the lyrics inside and out, know the show really well, then I would say introduce yourself first by seeing it in the pro shot and then go in and take it live. Because I think I've got a better way to go with this particular piece. So yes. All right.
Okay.
All right. Now let's head into some more, as we always do, some text-based questions here. And so the first one is the opening number sets up Hamilton's plot as centered on the rivalry between Hamilton and Burr. Do you think the musical fully delivers on this promise? Why or why not? And I'm going to start this one.
Yes, because you were going to say something about this a moment ago.
Yes, this is my weakest element of the show because no, this show opens with this big promise that we're going to get the Salieri Mozart level rivalry between these two men, and the show just doesn't do that. I almost put this in the level of Diana the musical in the sense of the way the plot's done, where snap click, yeah, where this show, like, I get it. Lin-Manuel have read this bio on a beach somewhere and really love the bio of Hamilton. I get it. But this is way too much history to cram into a 2-hour show. And because you are now moving so fast and you have to do so much exposition just to get the bare basics of what's happening, what happened is that we lost Burr. For almost 2/3 of this show, Burr is not around, really, or is not really, like, basically the entire rivalry. He's not in the room where it happens. But he should be, because that's the promise of the show.
He wants to be. That's the point.
But then the whole rivalry because if you actually read the history of the rivalry between Burr and Hamilton, there is so much in there. Like, what I would tell Lauren if I was dramaturging this show back in the day, I would have said, cut most of Act 1, summarize it down into 2 songs, start the show with him arriving in Washington, and start with the cabinet meetings and work your way forward to his death. Because that's where the meat and the impact of who Hamilton is, and where he is most important in the story is here. Because his legacy is not his work in the Revolutionary War. But also, we all know what happens in that war. It's not a big, exciting thing. The Americans win, the British lose. Yippee-ki-yay. How many times can I watch Hamilton go, I want to go fight, and Washington going, no, stay home, write for me. It gets very redundant. And so the fact, I'm like, no, give me more of this politics. Like, his relationship with John Adams, his relationship with Jefferson and Madison and Burr, and how he navigates, and how ultimately
and what about John Jay?
John Jay, man. I mean, he deserves more love. He is obnoxious and just like, you know that, sir. But it's one of those things where, like, that particular work that he does in politics, and the fact that it's still today, like Jefferson talks about, I tried to undo the shit that he did, and I couldn't do it. Like, the fact that he was so powerful, and the fact that he actively lobbied against John Adams toward the end of his presidency. In this. He's not even a character, and it's like, he should be. Like, the relationship.
Quick side note. Anytime they mention John Adams, please, we are all picturing Paul Giamatti, right?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, sorry, actually, I take that back. I picture what's his name? William Daniels, Mr. Feeney from 1776.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
okay, no.
I
Anytime his
also
name
got
is
Giamatti
mentioned, it's
in.
Paul Giamatti is on the screen.
Once again,
And
there's a footnote in here where Lynn says, I'm just going to take it as a given that we've all seen the great HBO miniseries with Paul Giamatti, right? And that's like his justification for not having John Adams as an actual character in the show. Like, I'm just going to take as a given you've seen all that.
Yeah. But anyway, my point being is the show promises this great political Salieri Mozart rivalry in its opening number, and then it all gets crammed into like the last quarter of the show. And I'm like, no, that should have been your show. That's where, like, if you want to commentate on how white people in politics and how certain people were cut out and not included, and the whole concept of the fact they kept going back to slavery, because did have people in Congress who kept going back saying, yeah, we cut that out of the Declaration of Independence, and we had the Black Battalion, and we don't quite get there. We have these other people who don't want it. It's like, that's where you should go with this. Skip the Revolutionary War crap. That's boring. Summarize it for me in like 2 songs and move on. Like,
I think you're the only person in the world who actually likes Act 2 more than Act 1. And
I
like,
do.
you're allowed. I'm not trying to take that away from you, but like, you are
the
minority.
The cabinet battles, the whole song all about, it's great that Washington's got your back. Like, the rumor it happens, all that stuff. Like, just the political machinations of Hamilton being so smart to play on the ego of Jefferson and Madison to say, I will give you where the capital is, but the finance and the money power stay with me in New York. And they totally miss it and totally miss that political strategy. It's like, that's fascinating. And the fact that we skim right through all that, and the fact that
we still get it, though. It's in there.
Once again, because he just chose to do his entire life story versus taking just this really good chunk of time. Same thing with same thing as I said with Diana the musical. I'm like, just take the War of the Waleses. Just take her last 7 months of her life.
They did that on The Crown. We got it. It's fine.
And it worked much better than Diana the musical.
Well, yeah,
because
but
it told a more concise story. Because like, there's just so much in here, and like, by focusing more on just that more shorter time period, you could then expand his relationship with Mariah, whatever her name is, and also Eliza, like, you could, and Angelica, like, you could have easily gone more into all that type of letter writing and all that type of correspondence and what was going on there, because you're focusing more on just that particular time period and the work he did and the impact of who this man is. Because once again, people go, up until this point, people are like, Alexander Hamilton, the money guy, what's so special about him? Well, if you actually took the time and understood the work he did and how that affected what our financial systems are today, it's huge. Like that's where the story really shone for me, but it was so rushed and crammed, and the promise wasn't lived up to, that I went, that's why this show is, I just go, it's like, it was a bit overblown for me. The writing itself was very flawed. On multiple levels, like as Ryan said, like on the race commentation level and the slavery level, it didn't quite commentate well on, as well as just not living up to that promise of what that opening number sets up. Like, the opening number of Sweeney Todd sets up who Sweeney Todd is, and in fact, we're going to see the story of revenge and how it ultimately consumes the man in the end. That's and like Lin-Manuel has said, that the opening number of Sweeney Todd was his inspiration for his opening number. So one delivered, one did not. Ergo, that's why I don't feel this number works, or why this musical did not live up to its promise. Ryan, as an Amadeus rival for me, what are your thoughts on this?
I have thoughts. I didn't think I had this many thoughts, but you're bringing up some interesting stuff here. Because on one hand, I kind of do agree with the crux of what this question is getting at, and with your sort of stance on it, is that if it sets up from the beginning the promise of this great rivalry, Hamilton v. Burr, then yes, it doesn't really deliver on this promise. And I think the best evidence of that is the line at the end of We Know, when Hamilton says, quote, Burr, how do I know you won't use this against me the next time we go toe-to-toe, end quote. And that line always to me rings a little hollow, because when have these two ever gone toe-to-toe?
We don't see it.
I think it's trying to pretend that the rivalry is really between these two, but this show and the way it's setting this up is kind of, it's a victim of its own history, or the history that it's trying to depict here, because Jefferson 100% was historically Hamilton's great ideological opponent.
Yes.
Burr wasn't. Burr is the damn fool who shot him. And that is where the story logically has to end. If it is the life of Alexander Hamilton, it's pretty momentous that his frenemy and political colleague, Aaron Burr, current vice president of the United States, is the person that killed him. So, but I think the show is trying very hard to lay the tracks and groundwork that'll make that ending feel meaningful. In a lot of ways, I think it succeeds in that, based on Burr is very much a co-protagonist throughout. I agree that there are sort of long sections where we don't see him for a while or we don't get enough of him, but it is the fact that we have Wait For It, which is an I Want song. It's not a villain song.
Yeah.
He, in that moment, is the protagonist of this story. And we have Dear Theodosia, which shows the symmetry between these two men and how they're kind of living their life in this way. And even the moment, Mac, that you were just talking about, the whole, the deal in the room where it happens, where Hamilton sells out New York so he can keep his banks. I think that your critique against that actually is the response to your other critique about Burr. Because, yes, Lin has sort of shortchanged a lot of the political impact of that decision. But the thing he focuses on instead is who's the protagonist of that song. It's Burr. He's the storyteller. The song is about how he wants to be in that room and he was left out, and that changes his trajectory moving forward. So I think every opportunity he had to build up the humanization of Burr, someone who is both historically and by this musical shat on constantly. He is the villain in your history, as he says in one of the final songs. And like, you know, we have Lafayette right being like, "You are the worst, Burr." Like, what did Burr even do? And we have, and there's actually a really funny foot, like in the when Burr offers his services to be Washington's right-hand man and Washington just innately refuses. There's a footnote in here that Miranda includes. I love these footnotes. There's so much juicy information in them. But he basically says that, like, the way I wrote this scene, as if it showcases the wisdom of Washington. He has a special innate wisdom that only like animals and small children have, that you could just tell someone's bad news. And I'm like, what did Burr do to give Washington that impression? And so, and I think what Burr did is he killed Alexander Hamilton, and that is why that so much of this story feels like it has to be about Burr, when historically they crossed paths here and there. It's kind of interesting how much they crossed paths, maybe, but that wasn't the ideological dispute.
And it was these two.
And I'm glad that we still do get a lot of Jefferson, because to rewrite the history as if let's just pretend that was Burr all along, who Hamilton was always, sparring with, that would kind of be weird and confusing. And I think people know enough about the history of the American founding and Jefferson's role in it in particular to know that's not maybe quite right. But I think it does a good job with a difficult challenge of how do we make this a show that will meaningfully end with Burr killing Hamilton in the duel. And it tries its best, but not if it wants to respect the elements of that history, it's not going to succeed in every way of doing that. Long rant over, I guess.
Yeah. Jill?
Basically, you both have kind of, pinned the tail on the donkey here. I don't know why I used that reference.
The Democratic Party.
There it is. Obviously, I don't think it fully delivers on this promise, but I will say, throw a little wrench in here. This musical, how it's set up, and I don't know if this was Miranda being like, "Oh, I'm going to write it this way." I feel like this musical is written in letters. Like, it's very snapshotty of Alexander Hamilton's life. And we get chunks of like Eliza's solo song. We get chunks of Burr. We get, Jefferson coming in when he does. Like, I feel like if there was like a giant chest full of letters in Alexander Hamilton's office that was just opened, and then it's like, okay, let's sew all these together, put it in a scrapbook, and call it Hamilton the Musical. So I think in a way, by me thinking it through this way, and I don't think this is like necessarily fully fleshed out as to this is how and why it's written the way it is, but it gives a little bit more justification of why we only get these characters in certain moments, in certain times, saying certain things. Because also the history of the letter, right? It's like, I mean, like the history of the letter, but like you only have what's written in that letter. And a lot of the times in letters, like you're getting the extent of XYZ emotion because that's all you had time for. And, you know, so like, I don't know, it's
really
funny.
Did write like he's running out of time.
Literally, right? And it's like, if you're running out of time, you're going to snapshot, you're going to just try to pack in as much as you can. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of justifying as to why, because I don't think it's just the Burr thing that isn't fleshed out in this conversation, right? I've talked about even how like the women could be talked about more, could this and that more. But if we go down to what I'm saying here of like letter writing or like pamphlets, that you're only going to be able to ingest what is in front of you, what is written on the page, what is presented to you. And let's remember at the very end of this piece too, it's Eliza who fulfills his legacy and tells this story. And that's kind of curtailed to us at the end. So again, justifying she absolutely was not in any of the rooms where this happened, right? Her own, again, I'm inside the characters here. Like she would only know so little about all of these men that were in her husband's life because all she had was the letters that were written in correspondence to
the narrative. Yeah.
Exactly. The only narrative that she has are the letters that Alexander left behind. So again, it's justifying potentially the loopholeness that this piece definitely has. And that's my video essay on that.
All right, next question. Hamilton takes plenty of liberties with history. One example being its altering of the Schuyler family dynamics by only including the daughters. Given these changes, was Peggy necessary, or could her removal have allowed for deeper exploration of Angelica and Eliza's characters? Jill, you keep alluding to the women of these of this piece and how they were underserved. What are your thoughts?
I think we had a deep enough exploration of Angelica and Eliza. For the content that we're given of them, and like I said earlier in this discussion, I think what was sewn into this piece for them, I think fits into the Hamilton quilt quite nicely. I like that Peggy is there because she is there in history, and it adds the like, and Peggy, like there's always a forgotten sibling. There's always that sort of downtrodden, doesn't have a voice. And like I said, the women playing these tracks I will say, Miranda, again, tipping the hat. They are showcasing very like archetypal women of that time or vibes of that time. We have the one like the firecracker, we have the like devoted wife, and then we have kind of this like neutral in the middle Peggy. But what's lovely about pairing that track to Mariah Reynolds, I like that we don't necessarily get too deep into Peggy because it allows there to be like when the actor playing Peggy goes on to play Mariah, like we've seen this actor on stage already, but we're not so tethered to her that we can allow this sort of outside woman to have a bit more agency as well. So I do like the balance that Miranda gave us with this Peggy Mariah track. And as someone who has played in plays before and played multiple tracks, whether you like it or not, when you're an actor playing multiple tracks, your brain and your body finds a commonality or a contrast purposefully through playing those roles. So again, kind of a funsy meat and potatoes that the actor who gets to play this Peggy Mariah track, there's a lot of fun to be had there of the like the opposition that both of those women, sort of the roles that they play, the sort of younger, neutral sister in the shadows, but then this woman who has been overshadowed and has like such a lust and need for intimacy. Like it's such a contrasting, lovely track to play. Yeah, I feel like it's gotta be there. Because I also think if it was just Angelica and Eliza, I think it would be like too stereotypical of like, look at these two different women in Alexander's life. Like we have that in a ton of musicals already, right? There's always the two women that are surrounding or in and around a protagonist male. Like, I'm not even going to give specific examples because you're all probably thinking of them right now. But I don't know.
Hyde, Les Mis.
Exactly. Jekyll and Hyde, Sweeney Todd, like there's always, and it's not necessarily centered around the same male character, but I just feel like there's always like, there's two female characters that are on the call board for this.
We don't have the budget for a third woman. Sorry,
exactly.
Arguably, they shouldn't have one either for a budget for a third one.
And it's like the trio. I don't know. There's the three's a crowd. I like that there's three of them. It adds a little bit more agency to the XX chromosomes happening in this piece. Yeah. So don't remove Peggy. Keep her in. And I would argue like Peggy and Mariah's track is probably one of the most fun ones to play in this. That, and then I would probably say the next one would be Lafayette and Jefferson. That's on that.
Nice.
Well, Jill, I am going to piggyback, but counter piggyback on to you on
Peggy
this.
back? You're going to peggy back? And
I'm going to piggyback you on this, and we're going to cut Peggy. Because this Aunt Peggy stuff just highlights how underserved these women characters are in the show. Because we set up this third sister, and she is not even seen in the second act. She's just gone.
I think that's the point, though.
But then I'm like, why did you even have her to begin with? I'd much rather give more time to Angelica and Eliza in their dynamic as sisters and this differentiating life. Like I love Angelica's song where she talks about being the oldest child and having to set like the path for her siblings. But then at the same time, she loves Hamilton. And just, there's this weird emotional cheating that Hamilton does throughout the whole show on his wife with his sister-in-law. You know, it gets weird and we never address it. But instead we have Aunt Peggy, where at no point do any of these sisters go, hold on a minute, sis, what are you up to here? Why are you like getting so like emotionally connected with my man here? This isn't right. Anyway, point being is the fact that she's just gone and then Mariah shows up. It's such a, like, unlike Lafayette and Jefferson.
I think.
No, but it's like
so many women's voices and bodies and agencies were not even documented. And then when they are, they're treated like whores.
Yes.
Boom.
But I love Mariah. Mariah's character I want to keep because she's an important historical figure to the story. Peggy, I'm like, you don't do anything with her. She's just Aunt Peggy. So it's like, at least if you're going to include her, do something with her. She right now, she feels like Bet in Oliver, where she was supposed to be an important side character, best friend of Nancy and love interest for Oliver Twist, but the creation just kept chopping down the character to the point where she's now just a glorified extra. And I go, why is she in this scene? She has no importance. She has one song, I Do Anything, and then is just gone from the rest of the show. It makes no dramaturgical sense.
I think it makes all the dramaturgical sense. Again, she represents the women that aren't even documented. And then when we do see this same face,
Peggy has a great history if you actually read up about who she is.
Sally,
but no one knows. But no one knows anything about it, though. That's the cheekiness. I think, and Peggy, it's like until you look up what that is, you would have no idea who the fuck Peggy Schuyler was.
But
that's the cheekiness of it. That's what I'm saying. No, that's the solution. That's why she's there.
Yeah.
But then also when we see the same actor playing the character of the literal woman on her knees, the whore, the like voiceless, that doesn't get any agency, I think, again, that's a beautiful sort of arc that the and Peggy sets up to this, like, rightfully so, lustful, downtrodden woman. Justice for that track, man. That track is yes. Ryan, go ahead.
Okay, wow, I did not expect this question.
Be my second, Ryan.
Can we agree that dueling is pointless and dumb? Wow, I did not expect this question to be so contentious. And I didn't even write it, Matt. Good job.
Thank you.
So,
You
yeah.
just blasted yourself there.
No, it's, so, yeah. Well, Mac, let's just go dial back to the question a little bit, because yes, Mac, you are correct that Lin has no problem rewriting the historical family dynamics of the Schuyler family.
Yeah, they were brothers.
Yeah, so there's the only allusion to the fact that there are no brothers, like it could just be that, yes, there's brothers that we don't see, but Angelica has the line, and satisfied, my father has no son, so I'm the one who has to social climb for one.
Yes.
And once again, we have a note.
Great book.
I love this book so much. But the note, quote, okay, so Philip Schuyler really did have loads of sons. I conveniently forgot that while I was writing this in service of a larger point. Angelica is a world-class intellect in a world that does not allow her to flex it, end quote.
Absolutely.
I agree with that, but I also, like, this isn't even about Peggy for a moment, but just like, you could communicate that same point without writing in a line that changes the fact that she had brothers. And like, you know me, I'm not actually like historical accuracy, but it just
right. Like, you're like, fuck with historical accuracy.
And if it was just for historical accuracy, but I don't see why, looking at the line of lyrics and the annotation that accompanies it, I don't see why it's necessary to conveniently forget that to make that point. That point shines through just fine. I think it's a great rhyme. My father has no son, so I'm the one who has to social climb for one. But I think that's why he conveniently forgot it, not because it serves as grander point about feminism. I think I call foul on that a little bit. And then there's another marginal note, because this now brings us to Peggy, in the Schuyler Sister song, that where Lin kind of addresses why Peggy disappears. Whether or not you're satisfied by this answer will be your mileage will vary, but here's what he.
Because it's double track and there's no quick change time.
Well, yes, but so this is what he says historically, at least. Quote, poor Peggy. She doesn't stick around the story long enough to merit a musical motif, and that's why Aunt Peggy is the way it is musically. Returning to the quote, she married rich and died young, in case you were wondering where she is in Act 2, end quote. So
at least throw a line in saying she died. Like, at least give me a line that kind of wraps up her story versus being like, well, clearly she has to do another track, so that's why we're not getting her in the second act.
Well, but it's not just like, think about it like a playwright for a moment. Mariah Reynolds is an important figure in the story of Hamilton. She cannot show up before Act 2. She's not part of the story, at least the way that it's spaced and structured now. So Occam's razor would suggest that Lin had no problem removing the sons, but opted not to remove Peggy because he needed something for the actor playing Mariah to do in Act 1. It's kind of as simple as that. And you can not.
But he didn't really have to. The actress who plays Cosette in Les Mis is a factory girl. She's a prostitute. She's a cart watcher. And then she goes off stage for 20 minutes to change into Cosette, and then she's off stage for 45 minutes at the end of the show.
Like, sure, you could give her a background track, but all of the speaking roles in this show do have speaking parts in both Act 1 and 2, and there's a lot of very strategic doubling in this that is signaled as early as the opening number. Me, I died for him, we fought him, we loved him. And if you kind of go through who's saying that, yes, both John Laurens and Philip Hamilton died for him. That's very clever. And both Mulligan and Lafayette fought with him in one sense, and Madison and Jefferson fought with him in another sense. Very good. The we loved him that the ladies do doesn't really have that same kind of symmetry because there's no doubling for 2 out of the 3. But the fact that all 3 of those actors play a woman who loved him in one way or another, it kind of works. It's not necessarily an argument for keeping Peggy or not, but it does. Yeah, we don't have any of our background ensemble characters who suddenly take on a big speaking part in Act 2. We maybe have, like, I guess Samuel Seabury is like the closest example that he has a brief speaking part in Act 1, but he is very much a background player. And yeah, there's like the odd ensemble speaking line that they get. I know like Ariana DeBose plays one of the women that Philip flirts with, etc. But yeah, like it's for the most part just you can't have someone as important as Mariah's actor not show up somewhere in Act 1 in some meaningful way. And I think Peggy, as a real life Schuyler sister, is as good a use as any. The part that I kind of take issue with in your phrasing of the question, Mac, is the insistence, and it is to your answer too, the insistence that Peggy's presence somehow detracts from a deeper exploration of Angelica Eliza, because she's not in it enough. That's not like, man, all that time you spent developing Peggy could have been used developing these other ladies otherwise. And I will maybe even push back against the idea that the will they, won't they, did they emotional cheating relationship between Angelica and Hamilton doesn't get resolved in the musical, because it doesn't get resolved historically. It's something that historians speculate about, but we have no way of knowing whether or not there was anything there. You can close read the letters and try to decipher whether or not they had some kind of relationship, be it physical or purely emotional. But the musical is attesting to the fact that all we can do is speculate about that we don't really know. And I think it does a good job of dancing that line without being definitive one way or the other. But the actual resolution we get to that plot does exist. In fact, it exists so much we get it twice. And that is first when Angelica shows up after the Reynolds pamphlet or during the Reynolds pamphlet song. And Hamilton's like, thank God, someone here who understands me. And she's like, I'm not here for you. Yeah. I'm here for Eliza. Like, that is the break in their relationship. Yes. She has no sympathy for him. That boy is an Icarus. He's flown too close to the sun. And then we get the final resolution to it is she's buried at Trinity Church near you. So in death, there is this reconciliation of this relationship that, yes, he did this horrible thing that did turn her against him in life, but there is still something meaningful there. And factually, it's true that they are buried near each other in that way, which adds more kindle to the possible, was there something more there that even Eliza must have recognized if she allowed them to be buried that close together. I don't feel like Peggy's presence takes away from any of that. So I don't really see the problem with her being there. That's my kind of 2 cents. And I like her. She's great. She's Peggy.
And Peggy.
Sorry, Mac, you're outnumbered here.
You're wrong. The Aunt Peggy's funny. I just go,
you're the Peggy in this conversation, Mac.
Oh, can I be Eliza?
I'll be, of course. I want to be Angelica. Duh.
I mean, like, Aunt Peggy's funny. It's funny. I just go, why? Better.
Fair.
Yeah. Better.
Yeah, like, it doesn't add much, but if it gives us a chuckle, does it need anything more than that? I don't think it would have been a good use of time to overdevelop Peggy. That might have actually taken away from Angelica and Eliza.
Once again, if you just do what my dramaturgical brain says, where you skip all of Act 1 and just start in Act 2, then like you don't need Peggy at all. You can just,
well, because she's dead by that point. So
exactly. You cut all the unnecessary stuff. The only thing I love about having Peggy there is that trio sound of 3 women singing. It sounds amazing.
And I do like how she actually, by being a bit of a foil in the conversation that happens in Schuyler Sisters, that Daddy says we shouldn't go to war or whatever, it creates a bit more of a united front between Angelica and Eliza that kind of shows that they're always together, thinking as a unit. Without Peggy,
and Peggy gets screwed.
But without Peggy there, Eliza probably would have had to be the voice of some of that resistance to need to be convinced otherwise by Angelica. So I think, there is something unique about the energy that Peggy provides that allows the 2 important sisters to kind of be merged closer together in that way.
Can I also just go to bat for being a woman and showcasing like multiple sides of women? I like that it is the same face and flesh that gets to play this guppy, young, naive, gullible, neutral side that is womanhood. Mm-hmm. And then she plays the lustful, downtrodden, rule breaker, defy societal means that is womanhood. I just feel like through this track, there's the depths of being a woman during that time. Like, and the pendulum swinging from Peggy to Mariah is they're completely opposite women, but they both represent women. Like, I just think, I don't know. That's just like
it makes the role fun to play, I think.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know, it's another way, another texture that I think I would imagine Miranda wanted to kind of play with in representing women in this piece, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's on that.
All right, last question of the night. Hamilton revolutionized Broadway when it premiered. However, unlike other genre-defining shows such as Company, the concept musical, or Les Miserables, the sung-through musical, Hamilton hasn't sparked a wave of similarly styled musicals. Why do you think this might have been the case? Does it suggest that Hamilton's success was a fleeting phenomena, or does it, or does its uniqueness signal a lasting and singular place in history of Broadway? Ryan.
Yeah, I thought about this question for a while, and I have kind of a lot of different thoughts about it. It's very difficult to mimic Hamilton without being very transparent in doing so. And I've seen multiple kind of examples of people trying to do just that, sometimes as a joke, sometimes seriously, but it's always very bald-faced in what it's doing. And I'll start with some of the joke examples. There's, I think, a scene in Family Guy where Brian is writing like a 1970s style funk musical about Howard Taft. So, like, yes.
The middle does it where the middle has an episode where Brick is trying to write all about Charles Darcy McGee.
Exactly. Yes. So we get, it's hard if you do just like, okay, filling in the Mad Libs of contemporary music style, forgotten political figure. Okay, I think we got something. Like it's you're not gonna catch that lightning in the bottle twice. Curb Your Enthusiasm, also with Lin-Manuel Miranda as a guest star, did Fatwa the musical a shtick with that kind of thing. So like, yes, it's very funny to be kind of like saying, Hamilton was successful, we're gonna do like a Hamilton, right? Yeah. You're not gonna get another big sort of success that way, I don't think. And there was an example in Canada a number of years ago called Onegin. Perhaps some of you saw it. It was, and I liked it overall, but it was very much trying to be Hamilton. It was based on the epic Russian poem Eugene Onegin, which also features a duel. And they did a colorblind cast, and they did a lot of contemporary music styles, and you can't really watch it and think, this is just Hamilton, right? It's not as good as Hamilton, but it is basically just Hamilton. And I say that as somebody who enjoyed Onegin, and it featured some of like the best actors we have in Toronto now. Darren Herbert was in it, Haley Gillis, Peter Fernandez, great cast, but it was very clearly trying to be Hamilton. And I think that was a weakness in it. And even if there isn't necessarily like obvious successes of how Hamilton revolutionized musical theater or changed things in a lot of ways, I do think there's just a lot more subtle ways that it maybe sparked waves of innovation throughout contemporary musical theater. Mm-hmm. I don't think we would have things like Six or Hadestown or Great Comet or even Strange Loop if we didn't have Hamilton, or if Hamilton wasn't the mega success that it is. And maybe we would have versions of those things, but I think they would look very different than the versions we ultimately got if they didn't come in the aftermath of Hamilton. And like one last thing that I think needs to be said about this is maybe Lin-Manuel Miranda hasn't colonized the musical theater, so to speak, but he has colonized another space of musical narrative, and that's Disney. Yeah. Just like Howard Ashman colonized Disney in the 1990s, Miranda is their go-to guy anytime they need to write a scuttlebutt for a Little Mermaid, or We Don't Talk About Bruno for Encanto.
Yeah. or like Live Fantastic and Mary Poppins.
Yes, like he is their guy. He is the only musical theater composer they seem to know exists.
Well, and also the Lopez's.
Okay, yes, the Lopez's too. Yes, true.
The three of them together make up the current Disney trifecta.
But yeah, like it is interesting to think about how when we talk about musical theater, we talk about things like the structures of them and I Want songs, all of that existed in musical theater, but the reason why anybody our age knows about that as a shorthand is because of the Disney Renaissance movies. And all of that is because of Howard Ashman's influence of bringing that musical theater style into animated films. And that's a big part of why those musicals were so successful. So if you want to look at the legacy of Hamilton and what Hamilton contributed to the culture, you don't necessarily need to look even to something as close as his The Warriors new musical that I'm excited to see what that's going to be like. But just look at Encanto, look at Moana, look at Scuttlebutt. That is the rippling influence of the cross-media pollination that is what Hamilton brought to the culture.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Love it.
Mic
Jill?
drop. Yeah, I agree. I think there's pieces of media that pop up at the perfect time. Like, it's like the universe is like, especially something like this, right? Where like Lin-Manuel was working on it for like 6 years, but when it came out was when it was supposed to come out.
Yep.
And there's other large pieces of media that probably not even going to make sense. That I'm throwing it out there, but like Titanic was supposed to come out when it came out. There, you know, like there's certain, I'm not even going to give more examples because I think we're getting the flavor here. There's just
Easy
for
Rider
some reason
needed to come out when it came out.
there's just for some, like, it's hard to even explain, but it's like a something that people need, and it drops at the right time at the right moment. And again, this piece is so textured when it comes to politics, when it comes to genre of theater, when it comes to like, there needed to be a change in the genre of in what theater is, but there also needed to be a change in the political climate. And again, these two things married was Hamilton. And it's something that is, again, the universe aligning that and dropping it when it did. Of course, it's going to have a rippling effect. And I think it just shell-shocked so many people in a good way. Like, I think it again, in living in a society, especially, I know this came out in 2016, but it was still kind of exponentially getting on everybody's radars until the pandemic happened. But I would argue too, like how, you know, theater's a dying art form. Hamilton saved that. Hamilton really came up and was like, I get it. We've got Netflix. We've got all of these, like the rise of these streaming services, and Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda saved our asses as theater goers. Cause I also think it brought in a whole new climate of audience. It brought in a whole new, it opened up brains of other playwrights and other passion projects that were probably simmering. And then it took this piece to kind of be a catalyst to, let's get these into work because it works. So I think, like, going back to the question here of like, why hasn't there been necessarily the same? Because there never will be. Just like there's never going to be a Titanic that's the same as the OG type. Like, there's just OG works of art that will be sort of like tombstoned and create like a gateway for stuff that will have the same flavor, but it'll never sort of be, even like in our discussion, right? We're like, it's the OG cast. That's amazing. It's the OG. Like, there's something immortalized in pieces of art. Look at even like the Statue of David, right? Or like the Mona Lisa. Like, we can even get into other forms of art that are immortalized. And I don't know what it is, but there's just something that just makes the OG versions of everything I've just listed like untouchable. So I don't necessarily think it's a fleeting phenomenon. I just think there was just alignment and boom, it took off, you know? And sorry, just going back to the question here, does it uniqueness single a lasting and singular place in the history of Broadway? Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it needs to be like on a pedestal, but I think we do need to honor it as a catalyst that theater needed when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, if I could kind of add on that, and sorry, Mac, before we get to you and your thoughts, because I'm sure you have many about the history of musical theater. Like, it's something I kind of feel like I raised a version of this point in the Beatles Get Back episode that I did with our friend Michael Roth. But it's sort of interesting to think about how musical theater responds to popular music and the different trends. And Michael kind of raised a point about how when Bernstein wrote West Side Story, he thought he was changing the face of music forever, but then the Beatles happened very shortly after, and then that changed it in a completely different direction. And that kind of made me think about how, well, in terms of, Jill, what you're saying about everything needing its moment or kind of the universe or stars aligning to make it happen, it kind of seems inevitable that in the cultural landscape where hip hop is the most influential force in popular music, we were kind of due for a hip hop musical at some point. And I think Lin was the perfect person to do it because he's a musical theater nerd and a rapper. So he was able to marry those two things in a way that it would be palatable to Joe Broadway and still push the envelope musically to introduce hip hop into a space that it had previously been barred. And if we kind of think about how, isn't it sort of weird that a Puerto Rican rapper, is Disney's go-to guy to write music for all their family films? It kind of makes perfect sense when you look at him and like, okay, this is the guy. He loves the presidents. He loves Broadway. He loves all these things that like he's kind of like the whitest guy who's not white to do this and just kind of represent this, I think, very strategically, this marriage of forms that allowed hip hop aesthetics to enter Broadway in this way.
And I want to add, and I think this will probably be a good segue to you, Mac, because like you'll probably touch on the history of musical theater, but like I feel like Hamilton brought back the fact that musical theater is a song and dance. Because I think we had the song and dance-ness, right, of the golden age of the earlier times. And then you get into the like Next to Normal, Rent, Les Mis, things that are a little bit more like, this is a musical and it's sung, but we've stripped, it's almost like there was in the genre of musical theater, it's like you're a song and dance or you're just a song, or like there was like a dissonance. Whereas I feel like with Hamilton, again, it's not only is it like now this is sort of a new take on what musical theater song is, but also the dance, meaning like I think it's as much as we talked about the ensemble and the movement pieces being like the underbelly of this piece, I think you can very easily be like, oh, right, like Hamilton is packed with choreography, but you don't necessarily, you're not having to come out of the storyline to do this big tap number. It's not seen separately. It's integrated. So I also think Miranda gave us a really fun, neat way of bringing back the fact that musical theater can be a song and dance, but it can be digested and ingested in a different way than we had seen it to date, kind of thing. And now I think we're even seeing that in newer musicals and it's just a little bit more, it's not so cut and dry, the position that like song, dance, acting fits in a musical. I don't know. There's, again, more doors have been opened, but Mac, I'll kind of let you maybe springboard off of that.
Give us a lecture in the history of musical theater. You've earned it.
Oh, God.
200 episodes.
Oh, dear. But also, we've been going.
Yeah.
Spark note it.
Well, I mean, so, yeah, like Hamilton hasn't sparked what we would traditionally see in the Broadway world, where, Company comes out, and then not long after that, along comes JC Superstar, and then along comes a chorus line where it was the concept musical, where it's like, okay, somebody did this, and now we're going to kind of spin, but still keep relatively close in concept to what it is, We then have kind of the bridge with like Cats, where it's like the concept show, but it's a sung through kind of operetta style show, which then opened the door to the further expansion of, You had things like Evita, and then that opens up to Phantom and Les Mis, where it's like the West End invasion into Broadway was really there. And then so Hamilton came out, but everything there was like, it was a concept, but it was easily applicable to go into different genres within a bigger thing. Like as Ryan, you said, Hamilton is a sung through show. So it is part of that bigger root of that or tree branch there. It's the genre of music that is the most unique part, which is the hip hop rap. And like Sondheim, writing a rap or a hip hop, it takes a very distinct sound and artist to do it well. And Lin-Manuel Miranda has that gift of poetry and lyric and verse like Sondheim did, where he can write layer upon layer. Now, mind you, like Sondheim, now that you've heard one Lin-Manuel Miranda, you've kind of heard them all, because In the Heights sounds very similar to Hamilton, and then even like his rap song in Mary Poppins sounds, it's like, oh, or Scuttlebutt, it's like, oh, this is a Lin-Manuel Miranda. I think basically he has his voice now, and people know what it is, and that's kind of where it's going to be. But it's the point of, there's not a lot of composers in the musical theater world who are comfortable writing in rap and hip hop. So that's why we have not seen the rap and hip hopness really take off within Broadway. We've seen, as you both have said, we've seen the kind of spoken wordy style singing come back a bit more. The Rex Harrison-esque, you can even look at like this style of writing. It goes all the way back to Music Man in 1957 with Rock Island, where it's the opening number. Exactly. What do you talk? What do you talk? Where do you get it? What do you talk? Where do you get it? You can talking bigger. You talking bigger. Talk.
That's a rap. That is a rap song.
Oh my gosh.
It's a total rap song. It's a total rap song that sounds like a train. It's really cool. I love it. Or even you Got Trouble is another rap style song.
Yeah. Freaking love Music
Man.
Man.
Music Man's great. It's
Episode 300 should be Music Man. I've decided.
Nice.
Well, there are enough pro shots we could easily do a conversation.
TBD. We're not committing to that.
Point being is, the style is not what, it's the genre itself. It's hip hop and rap that is the tricky part in this equation. The rhyminess, the wordiness, that goes back to Sondheim, that goes back to Music Man. We just it was the genre that was unique and special, and it takes someone like a Lin-Manuel Miranda to bridge the gap and do that really cool rap Broadway fusion that we have not seen again. Nor, once again, as Ryan said, when people try and do it, they're going, oh, you're just trying to be Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's like now, anytime somebody does a French Revolution musical, like, Tale of Two Cities. I love that musical, but I can fully acknowledge there's a lot of Les Mis-iness in that show. Even though it's a great story and it's my favorite Dickens. But it feels like a Les Mis show, Until Tomorrow sounds like a lot like Do You Hear the People Sing meets One Day More. You can't escape it. It's so tied. Where it's like now, anytime somebody's going to do a historical rap musical about some historical figure, it doesn't have to be an American politician. Could be, about Margaret Thatcher, if you wanted to. Probably wouldn't work, but I'm just I'm putting things together out there.
I would like to see it, but as a train wreck, not because I think it would be good.
Margaret Rapper.
Yeah. Right? But it's like people will just go, oh, it's Hamilton, just X has changed. So that's why it won't be recreated. It won't launch the phenomenon the way we think it will. As we said, its spices have been sprinkled in elsewhere in other soups. It's not the same as like people just taking the tomato soup and just changing the recipe a little bit. This is where we're taking some of the DNA and sprinkling it elsewhere. So it's like it's this wonderful elsewhere where it's like it's like an idiotically sending out shooters into the ground. You're getting these new flowers popping up that are adjacent, but not directly related in the same bloodline. It's like third cousin versus first cousin. So that's what it is, and that's what makes Hamilton even more of a special, unique show within the pantheon of musical theater, where it will not be something where people go, "Oh yeah, it like Les Mis became Phantom, which then became Parade." It's like, no, that won't be it. Hamilton will always have its own unique spot in history, and that's okay. Instead, its life will be sprinkled elsewhere in, as you said, it's the witty text. It's that evolution of Sontaimian writing, that we're seeing. So that's what I would say. So it will definitely live on, but it won't be people writing more hip hop and rap in the same way. Like somebody like you usually get another hip hop or rap writer to come in and write something, but it won't be the same.
I want to add, because I feel like it's quite obvious, but using the genre and musical styling of rap and hip hop is obviously intentional, right? It's a cast of POC folks reclaiming their identities amidst the very whitewashed founding fathers. And it's using hip hop and rap.
Like that's why he chose it.
Right. But also like hip hop and rap is a revolutionary spoken word slam poetry. It's a reclaiming of narrative for POC folks that were, they found their voice in that genre. So I think also saying what I just said, Miranda reminded us that we don't just have to tell stories through song and dance. The way we tell them can also be done a certain way. Like I think the history of a lot of musicals, right? It's very, very rarely, I would argue, I guess you could even say maybe Rent falls under the same category as Hamilton, of like using grungy sort of rock oriented like ways to, again, dramaturgically justify the lives that those characters are living. Like I just think through Hamilton too, like using hip hop, using rap in the voices of the casts that we are presented with, like that adds another layer to what musical theater can do. Because I feel like a lot of musicals, it's a story that's told through music, and we all know the character breaks into song or breaks into dance when emotions can no longer be told through voice. You have to sing about it, you have to dance about it. But very rarely, I think you would find there to be, the genre in which this character is singing this makes sense to what they're saying. It's very much a lot of like, okay, this song is written and this character is going to sing the song. But with Hamilton, it's the way, and quite literally, we've talked about it. Miranda literally wrote Lafayette and Jefferson for David. Like, it's the way in which the songs are written and how they're written is now adding this other layer of musical theater. Like, I don't know. I feel like I could keep talking about that.
I
Go
think
ahead,
I
Ryan.
have some thoughts that sort of bouncing off what both of you are saying.
Yeah.
Mac, I kind of feel like you were getting to this point sort of at the very end of your very insightful monologue about all of this, but it's nonetheless where I think we'll find some of the future kind of trying to forecast what the influence of Hamilton will be, because we're not even 10 years out. Like there is still time for this to all germinate. Mm-hmm. You mentioned, Mac, that it's very hard for musical theater writers to succeed at writing rap. It's a skill that only Lin seems to have, and that's why he's been successful at it. And as we're just about to kind of say at the end, there is, I guess you could bring a rapper into like a collaboration with a musical theater writer to write this. But I think we don't even really need to do that, because that almost feels like you're cynically trying to manufacture another Hamilton by hire a rapper, have him team up with Pasek and Paul, and bada boom, bada bing, we'll get another Hamilton. But what I think will happen, because again, we're not even 10 years out from the mega success of this show, is young people who grew up with this, were inspired by it, who wanted to be rappers and still do, caught wind of Hamilton, and it made them realize, oh, I guess I also like musical theater, or I can like musical theater.
Right.
When they grow up, and go to theater school or become songwriters, we will see the influence of Hamilton on Broadway.
Absolutely.
And the other
Dear Theodosia, baby, let's go.
Oh, that's good. Dear Theodosia, I like that. And the other kind of side to that I'll say is, and I think Jill, something you said kind of put this bug in my brain, is that Mac, what you kind of said is that if we're kind of trying to isolate, what made Company different, what it innovated the idea of the concept musical, what made Les Mis different, it was the sung through idea. And you said that the thing that makes Hamilton different is specifically rap, and that's true, but maybe we can expand upon that idea, that it's not just that it used this specific genre of music, but maybe the bigger idea is that Hamilton proved that genres of music that had previously been excluded from the Broadway musical can be successfully integrated within it. So maybe the influence of Hamilton doesn't have to be where are all the rap musicals. Maybe we'll get a Calypso musical, or maybe we'll get, like, I'm just kind of weird that that's the first forgotten genre of music to come to mind. But you know what I mean? Like, different stories will demand form to reflect content in different ways. And we can point to the success of Hamilton as nobody thought a rap musical would work, but that made it work. What genre of music do you want to tell the story in? Maybe now we have a precedent for how that could be doable. Yes. And it doesn't just have to sound like what we think show tunes should sound like.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was a really good, nice summation of what I was trying to say too, Ryan.
Yes. So you helped me get there, so thank you.
Thanks.
All
okay,
right,
speaking of getting there, we've gotten to
the end. Here. Let's round out, and we will say kind of our final thoughts on we're 200 in. We're kind of what are our goals for the next 100?
Anybody who, they'll say anybody who only cares about Hamilton and doesn't even know who we are, if you want to stop watching by this point, you can, I guess. But if you enjoyed our thoughts, listen to what we have to say, I guess.
There's a lot of more goodies in there.
Yeah. So just going forward, the next couple, like, what do I want for the
next 100,
thoughts on the road to 200, and what are your thoughts about what we might expect in the next 100?
Like, team, go us. Let's just take a moment to raise our glasses to the trio that is Cup of Hemlock Theatre. Cheers. We have exponentially grown over these 100 episodes. We are now consistently being asked to attend live opening night performances here in Toronto, our home base. We've networked with lovely publicists, artistic directors of certain companies, and that list is just continuing to grow. We're recording this and releasing this at the top of autumn 2024, and our schedule is already jam-packed with wanting to be in attendance for opening night performances. And again, we're at a point now where I think I can confidently say we're not gonna be snoozing at the switch here, team. We're consistently, I think, we're locked in autumn and all the way at least until next summer. We're gonna have companies and shows to do duet reviews. So that's our main sort of, I would say, growth that's happened over the 100 episodes is the duet review vein of what is the Cup. But alongside that, the Cup interviews is continuing to grow as well. And I know that was a baby for all of us to kind of really stay in to networking with theater practitioners across all fields of theater. And I can, again, confidently say, I think that absolutely has sort of filled in the gaps in between our duet reviews quite nicely. And keep eyes and ears peeled, because we're starting to branch out. It's not necessarily just actors or just artistic directors. We're going to have some other folks down the line that are in different areas of theater. And so that's sort of blossoming as well. So we're continuing to grow. Our cup is overflowing with opportunity. Yes. And I'm very excited to see where this all goes. And I know we do have talk of wanting to bring up, some more roundtable episodes and, some more just stock reviews like we've done in the past of Broadway HD. But it's in the spirit of liveness and live theater, we're in demand to be in audiences and to be in conversation with humans here and now. So the stuff that kind of kept us afloat, watching pro shots, because that was the only means we had over the pandemic, or, having discussions about certain topics because that was the only thing we could do as a team on Zoom. Those obviously we'll bring back those episodes when we can, but it's sort of titillating to know that it's the liveness of theater that is what our recordings are kind of biting into through doing these duet reviews. And it's being in conversation with folks, in a networking room or in a post show where you're like, yeah, I'd like to get you on the cup. It's that we're starting those conversations in person to now take to our digitized medium. So I'm excited to just see where that goes. And it's kind of lovely that our schedule is just kind of making itself now. Like we're kind of some weeks we're kind of having to fit in and navigate, and we're branching off as a team. Sometimes all three of us are in demand, so we're bringing on folks to join us, and that I think is neat as well. Our little pod squad, if you will, is growing. I'm very proud of us. Look at that. So yeah, I'm excited to just continue seeing us grow.
Love that.
I don't know, did that fully answer the
great,
question there?
That was great. Ryan, what do you want to add?
Yeah, no, a lot of what Jill you said were things that were on my mind too. That if I look back on the road to the first 100, there was arguably a lot of constant flux and uncertainty about the identity of what Cup of Hemlock even was. We had sort of, we've talked about this numerous times, don't need to reiterate it here, but the journey from what was supposed to be a theater company becoming a podcast on the side, and then becoming only a podcast, and then what it even was, and it was still a pandemic, and trying to find online content to review. And when you actually think about that 100th episode we did, by that point, we'd only really just begun reviewing live shows back in the city. I actually went in to count this. Prior to that point, if you don't count the Fringe Roundup, we had only done 8 episodes that were reviewing shows that were live in person by that point. In the intervening 100 episodes, 48 of them, again, not counting the various roundup episodes, but 48 of them are just all about a single show that we are reviewing live in the city.
That's amazing.
And then if you include the Fringe roundups and other roundups, it's much even higher than that. So this, and it's kind of clear to us, I think, that more than anything, while we do have lots of different branches and we do a lot of different things, I think, reviewing shows and servicing our local community here in Toronto is the main thing that we have become. And I think we have settled very comfortably into the groove. And that naturally will set the pace of the rest of the schedule, because everything else we do has to fit around that, because those need to come out, obviously, in the timely manner to respond to the shows as they're happening. And I like how we've gotten into that consistent groove. Also, since our last 100th episode milestone, we introduced the editorial format, which we haven't done a lot of, admittedly, but it was in episode 126 that we did our first editorial kicking off that. And I think we've done maybe 5 or 6 of them by this point. And there's definitely more of those planned. We kind of have a growing list of ones we'd like to do. I have a very big one planned that I've been working on for a long time, and it's taking me a lot longer than expected. So no promises about when it's coming out, but there definitely are editorials in the works. But that is an example of what we always called the trove content that we keep in our treasure trove for when we need it. And lately, a lot of the trove content we've made has waited an awful lot of time to be needed. The episode we released just a few weeks ago of the Henry V from National Theatre, 7 months elapsed between when we filmed that and when we finally had a free space to release it. So moving forward, I think, we're doing a good job of responding to the new things. And while there is a lot of trovable things that we'd still like to do and will still do, you might find that we need to, I guess, just as a team, we need to rethink how we kind of approach these things and how we kind of fit things and how our scheduling is going to respond to how in demand we have become as reviewers of live work in the industry.
Yeah.
Something else that's also happened recently is I've kind of refound my excitement for interviewing, because for a long time there, I had kind of being the person who did a lot of our early interviews, and was kind of, I lost steam doing it after a while and kind of fell off it, only chiming in with an interview here and there. But the last few interviews I've done, I've been very happy with that. And I think I kind of found the secret sauce for how I can make myself excited to interview someone is interview people I have some gripe or disagreement with, because that is kind of how I've actually, and I've been doing this very strategically. I think the two recent interviews I've done that I kind of have this in mind are two artists who I have immense respect for, Anand Rajaram and Emily Dix, both of whose work I really appreciate, but both of whom presented some sort of challenge or complication or thing that I had mixed feelings about in their most recent offering that I really wanted to sit down and talk to them about. And that is exactly what I use that interview format to do with both of those artists. And both of them were appreciative and liked having a space to be challenged and talk through their ideas and kind of have a forum to say, yeah, maybe not everything's perfect, but these are the choices I made and why I made them. And yeah, they were just both very generous interlocutors for me to extend the process of criticism, not to just let the reviewer have the last word and say, I didn't like it because X, because the artists involved have a lot more to say about that than somebody who just happened to see it once do. And not to say that they replace the actual critical reception, because there's a lot of reasons why the artists might have skewed views or different ideas about why things are, but opening it up to that dialogue, I think, is very healthy and a good way that we can innovate both what an interview is capable of and how criticism is done. And, you know, I also interviewed Phil Rickaby, and who ended his, 400 episodes of Stageworthy podcast. And it's a service that is very much missed for what it was providing to the Canadian theater ecosystem. Our friend and colleague Janine Marley recently started her own podcast, A View from a Box, as a spinoff from her theater reviewing blog. And she's going to be interviewing a lot of artists there. I encourage people to check that out. If you have been missing Stageworthy and would like to have more interviews, or are upset with the fact that we don't constantly release interviews, that we only do it every so often, go check out Janine's show. I'm sure you'll get a lot more out of that. But yeah, I'm kind of happy with how I've refound the love for interviewing. And one last thing I'll kind of say, this show and what we do at Cup of Hemlock, it has outlived Jill's and I's romantic partnership, in that that we broke up. We were living together as a couple for several years, and we broke up between episode 172, Dead Elephants, and episode 173, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. That was right there in that week in the middle.
Unpack, what does it mean with those two pieces? My Lord.
but like, obviously we're still very close friends, and we obviously still care about each other, and we wouldn't be able to keep doing this if anything like that wasn't the case. But I like, there's just an element of maturity for how we've approached that breakup and that change in our lives, and our ability to continue doing this thing we love together with people we love. And that includes you, Mac, of course.
Oh,
yeah. Yes, it's been a great 200 episodes, and I'm really looking forward to 100 more.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how about you, Mac? Finish us off.
I mean, the next big things I see in our next 100 episodes, we keep talking about potentially looking into more funding and grant writing, so we can continue to expand the Cup even further. I would love, because I know Jill just got back from New York, but I would love for us at some point in this next 100 episodes to maybe do make a trip to like either the West End or New York and do like a kind of like a review roundup session where we taking a few maybe off Broadway, maybe a couple Broadway plays or musicals.
Yes.
And we kind of do that as like a fun kind of review roundup session, just kind of, once again, continue to branch it out internationally to grow it out there. Because we've had a few New York peeps join us on the show, but it's one of those things where COVID was obviously a deterrent at the time, but now it's like, okay, we can all travel. Maybe this is something at some point in our next 100, maybe we will try and get an international tour in there to do something fun with that as well. So
definitely, I will say, yes, I did recently go to New York with Mateo Chavez Lewis, who has been interviewed for the Cup, and we auditioned for something for Mateo. He sang stuff for Tommy Rhodes, which I mentioned was the musical I did in the spring.
Yep.
This is the first time I was going to New York as a professional artist, and I'm just going to say this on the docket because we're manifesting that shit. I need to be in New York.
We'll miss you in Toronto,
Gonna
though.
wanna be in New York. I could be a little hybrid lady, but I just got there and it was the room where it happens, and I'm gonna get in there.
It's the greatest city in the
So
world.
I also exactly says the Canadian. I will be making trips to New York, whether it be just like weekends at a time, however I can afford it, attending workshops and just being in the scene. I definitely want to do more of that. So yeah, team, I would love
Could be our man on the street correspondent in the Big Apple.
Yeah, or like come, join me. I know just professionally, that's going to be a sort of stepping stone for me in 2025. So come with me and the Cup takes New York.
Ooh,
love that.
Like the Muppets.
Yes. We basically are the Muppets. So that makes sense.
Who's who? Let's finish this off by saying which Muppets we are.
Oh God.
Is Grover
I don't
count as a
know.
Muppet? Because if so, I'm Grover. I feel like that's obvious.
I love that.
I feel like I can be all of them all at once or at different times.
Nice.
And I'm also a puppeteer now, so that just adds
to.
to.
Mac, finish us off. Which Muppet are you?
Oh, well, I mean, Beaker's my personal favorite just because he always had red hair.
Yeah.
Which is nonstop chatterbox. But I also do love Rizzo. Rizzo the rat is great.
Yeah, Rizzo. You're Rizzo, for sure.
Also Pepe.
Man.
Pepe the crustacean was great as well. So
yeah,
there we go.
Look at us.
Yes,
what a ragtag team. Did we think that the Hamilton episode would end with what Muppet are you?
Right? Who saw that coming? All right, Jill,
baby.
give us your socials. Where can we find and follow you?
Yes, find and follow my New York Adventures 2025. No, you can find and follow me in my artist Instagram account. It's Jillian.Robinson96. There's a lot of photo shoot content there. I'm trying to get into maybe like some modeling vibes as well. Woo. I just finished doing some improv on the Comedy Bar West main stage this past Tuesday. I'd love to just continue exploring improv. I've also got some burlesque ideas down the line. So I'm talk about tendrils or veins of something, like we talk about the Cup interviews, duet reviews, whatever. Jill's professional life is exploring the different tendrils of what live performance is too, through comedy, through burlesque. So keep your eyes and ears peeled to the page if you want to keep up with my adventures.
So fun. Fun. Ryan, give us that classic Ryan Borochovitz send-off.
200 episodes. No need to find and follow me, but if you like me and all my theater thoughts, they tend to live here on the Cup. That's Cup of Hemlock Theatre, the thing you're watching and or listening to right now. So you can like, share, subscribe, follow us at CoHT Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube, where you might be watching this, Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast, and all the podcast places where you might be listening to this. Also, if you like my theater thoughts, a lot of them have lately been getting published by Intermission Magazine, where I've been doing a lot more freelance work. I know when this episode is coming out, but I don't know when certain articles are scheduled to come out, because as a freelancer, I don't get a say in that. But perhaps a few have come out in the week leading up to this. So if you like me and my theater thoughts, you can read some more of them there. It's a great website and a great institution that's servicing our Canadian theater industry that, if you're not familiar with it, now's a good time to get in on that. It's great. How about you, Mac? Where can people find and follow you and listen to your other musical thoughts?
Yeah, that's right. Follow me at Mackenzie Horner, all social media platforms. You can follow my musical antics over at Before the Downbeat. We just started releasing the 6th season, and I can happily say Ryan will be appearing later on in the season. We are doing some fun with the Greeks and the Romans and some comedy tonight. Mm-hmm. Here's your hint for you.
Tomorrow.
Tragedy tomorrow. Comedy tonight on that episode. Mm-hmm. So there you go. But yeah, other than that, just follow me at Mackenzie Horner, and we will, I guess, see you all in episode 201. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.